Trustees of the town of Buena Vista. I need to do that again, Philip. I'm sorry.
You're all good.
We're all good. Roll call, please.
Trustee Fay,
Here.
trustee Lucrezi,
Here.
trustee Nyberg,
Here.
trustee Rowe,
Here.
trustee Swisher,
Here.
trustee Volpe.
You all, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. I would remind everyone to please silence your cell phones or turn them off. And first, we have a proclamation. And well-deserved, by the way. Whereas Estes Banks has stepped down from his role as Planning and Zoning Commissioner to move on to another Colorado community. Whereas Estes served as a volunteer to support his community by becoming an active member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Whereas Estes served as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commissioner from October 26, 2010 until October 6, 2021, representing his community for over a decade. Whereas Estes was an active part of the Planning and Zoning Commission, including his role in helping the town of Buena Vista adopt the Unified Development Code to replace its outdated regulations for land use matters. Whereas Estes Banks, Estes was a conscientious and thoughtful member of the commission that rationally applied common sense in reviewing land use matters and applied his skills as a commissioner to provide a stable and dependable evaluation of those matters that came before the commission. And whereas Estes Banks applied the same passions and skills that led him to become a Colorado Buffalo, Oakland Raider, and Cincinnati Bengal to his support of our community. Whereas this board desires to recognize Estes Banks, former Planning and Zoning Commissioner, for his 11 years of service to this community. And now, therefore, I, Mayor Duff Lacey, and the Board of Trustees hereby proclaim that the town of Buena Vista gives a special recognition and tribute to Estes Banks for his many years of outstanding service on behalf of the town of Buena Vista. Thank you very much, Estes.
Thank you.
Next item is the agenda adoption. Are there any additions, deletions, questions on the agenda? I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion
Thank you.
to approve.
Second, Fay, further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all. Next item is consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda or corrections? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Approve.
I'll second.
Second row. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, thank you very much. Next item is public comment. As we have been doing for nearly 18 months now, I guess, Philip. Have Zoom going on, so you can raise your hand in the chat box. You can, if you're on the phone, you can press *9. And the host will prompt you to speak up. Also, you can send an email in. We'll watch for those. I have a list of people that are here that have signed in. First on the list is Paul Ahrens. Paul, if you would, please stand and state your name and address.
Paul Aaron's one. Mayor, if you'll, Paul, if you don't mind, kind of, so you can pick up on the microphone.
Now we got you.
106 Shady Lane, Buena Vista. I'm here to talk on the water master plan. First, I wanted to, because we've been writing to boards and stuff since 1990, the late 1990s. And up until just this year, have only received one response. This year, I received a response from Mayor Lacy, from Trustee Swisher, and Joel Benson. So I appreciate the communication and response back. It is meaningful to get that back. Just had some comments on the master plan on things that have is one on the conservation. Rereading it again, it does really stick out that conservation is for growth, to provide growth. I think personally, I think it is wrong to ask citizens currently on the system to sacrifice for the benefit of growth. I think the comment that Right Water Engineers made in there on communication of the what, why, and when are really important, and that the why comment is extremely important. My second involves the dry field ditch. And one of the comments that Joel wrote back to me, it says the intended use would be as an augmentation, but perhaps some wheeling water arrangement. The dependency on this for more homes is not the intent. It is not a secured water source for more than augmentation. In the plan on tables 7, 8, and 9, it shows that the dry field ditch is adding SFEs. Table 7, using Right Water's formula, shows that it would add 314 SFEs. I think there just needs to be some true up between the real use and how the additional SFEs are being created, if it's strictly an augmentation source. My next comment is I think on infrastructure, to me, I would like to see in the plan the infrastructure related to SFEs, the way the water rights are. Infiltration gallery, when it's updated, the water plant, when it's updated, wells 3 and 4, what impact do they have on handling the SFEs that are out there? Because the SFEs range from 2,526 to 3,448. What's needed to meet each of those levels, and how much can meet each of those levels? My last comment is growth has many aspects, and a lot of them aren't necessarily part of the water plant, like streets, police, and stuff like that. But one part that is directly tied to water is sewer. The town in the tables that are in there, tables 7, 8, and 9, for instance, the one that has the dry year with conservation has 3,157 SFEs. I personally don't know, but can the sanitation district handle an equivalent level through the waters, through their plant, since that's a 74% increase? If it goes to the average year that has the 3,448 SFEs, that's a 90% increase. Can the sanitation district handle that level of SFEs? And are they planning going forward, looking for that type of growth to where they can handle it? I again would suggest that something like that should be part of a water master plan that the town has to handle those type of questions, those things, in addition to the comments that I previously sent to the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Jolene Aaron's. Please state your name and address.
Jolene Aaron's, 106 Shady Lane. Mostly I signed up in case he couldn't get done his time, but I will say I am in agreement with what he said. And I want my lawn green. I want my town green. I don't want a rock town. I am very dissatisfied that $1 million was spent on the property. I sent a letter that wasn't acknowledged by anybody, but I think that was wrong to use the money I put into the system to take care of my infrastructure. That was not right. In my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list is Andre Spino-Smith. Could you please name, address, please?
Yes, Andre Spino-Smith, 900 South Main Street. I'm here to read a letter from a group of local business owners. First, I'm going to read the list of folks that it's from, and then the letter itself. It's somewhat long, so if I'm taking too long, you need to cut me off. Feel free to do so. This guy right here, JJ Kinsfather, he's also signed up for public comment, and he'll take up where I left off.
Okay.
All right, so this letter is from Deer Hammer Distillery, Mountain Structures Company, Sundance and Friends, Buena Viking, House Rock Kitchen, River Runners, Buena Vista LLC, Mount Princeton Hot Springs Resort, Plan and Act Financial Planning, The Jailhouse, Cosmetic Spa, Coltrane Music Academy, Lem 1030, Rock Paper Scissors, H&Co, Heat Pressing On, Main Street Dental Hygiene, Motion Exchange Dance Studio, Surf Hotel in Wesley and Rose, South Main Vacation Rentals, The Asian Palette, Elkhorn Pizza, and Jolly Blue. Town of BV staff and trustees. This letter is to support music events in BV. It's been brought to our attention that the town has drawn a conclusion that special events such as these do not have a positive economic impact on small businesses. As business owners and operators in BV, we know firsthand that these events not only create community, but drive tourism and economic resilience. This past July 4th weekend with leftover salmon resulted in record-breaking sales for multiple businesses downtown. These events are essential and play a significant role in developing entrepreneurial ecosystems, allowing local businesses the opportunity to work towards a sustainable year-round economy. We've all met returning visitors who first discovered BV through a special event. Special events and music festivals are really important to the culture and economy in BV. And so as business owners, we implore you to please take this into consideration before putting any more restrictions in place, and hope that you will consider removing some recent restrictions that have made special events either more difficult or impossible. We have noticed that the town staff has made representations to Chaffey County and to the general public on behalf of the business community, which directly contradicts how we feel and what we believe. Specifically, in a recent staff report, the town wrote to the county regarding the Meadows Farm outdoor theater application. The town said, quote, "The town's analysis indicates that the impact from previous festivals and events from the Meadows venue has done little to benefit the small businesses in the community. The large events proposed tend to dissuade tourists outside of the event to visit the town. Even locals leave due to the invasive traffic and the high influx of people to the area." End quote. The business community that is sending this letter has seen a large increase in business since the first large event occurred at the Meadows called Vertex in 2016. Since then, there have been 7 national events with artists that play the world's largest venues. BV has received an unquantifiable amount of exposure, having tens of thousands of new visitors come to the area and through media outlets such as the Rolling Stone magazine, Dish Network, Nugs.net, the Denver Post, and literally millions of social media impressions featuring Buena Vista. Buena Vista has been personally mentioned and complimented by some of the most famous musicians in the world on national scale media platforms. We feel that these opportunities are positive for our businesses, that the many individuals we employ. We feel it is negligent to ignore all of this marketing and exposure and the sheer number of visitors to the events when calculating the economic vitality our town is experiencing as a whole. The staff report goes on to state that, quote, further degrade the infrastructure and town has to absorb the financial burden and physical impacts.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
This group is unaware of a situation where a business or any single event attracts so many customers that the streets and water lines or any other infrastructure literally wears out. We would kindly request the town provide additional information about the statement that was made in the staff report, as this would be important for our business community to review. The nature of the tax system is that business traffic pays the sales tax, lodging tax, creates jobs, and brings money to the local economy. There is no evidence that we are aware of that event customers do not spend money nor improve the economy. In fact, there are general festival statistics.
That's time. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, JJ. Address, please.
JJ Kinsfather, 905 Swift Circle. To continue on, there is no evidence that we are aware of that event customers do not spend money nor improve the economy. In fact, there are general festival statistics that for every dollar spent on festival tickets, $12 is spent in town on a coffee, a meal, or a souvenir. Over the past 5 years, the economy has boomed to epic proportions and surpassed the expectations of many. To not give any credit to the marketing and traffic from large-scale events seems unreasonable. All of our businesses have experienced direct and indirect benefits from the music festivals and the other events in town. So we would ask you that you help us understand your perspective and provide any data you have that would back up your findings that these events, quote, have done little to benefit the small businesses in this community. We are concerned that town's conclusions about special events and blanketed statements made on behalf of business owners in BV contributed to the loss of Seven Peaks. And we are further concerned that by creating barriers to other events that local businesses support, such as the Red and White and Blue Suede Shoes 4th of July Leftover Salmon Festival and the Rapids and Grass Beer Festival, that we will eventually lose these opportunities as well. The business owners who have signed this letter request that the town is supportive of live music festivals, and utilize the increase in tax revenue it is receiving to help facilitate these types of events. We're not asking for an event every weekend, but we are requesting the town not undermine events by creating new regulations to prevent them. In the last couple of years, the town has lowered its threshold to require special event permits while also implementing camping regulations, creating what we feel is unnecessary bureaucracy. We would ask that the town consider reversing this mentality so that the town might help the business community operate efficiently and grow its businesses, events, and customer base. Below are some of the newer policies we would request are analyzed and amended to be less restrictive and more supportive and empowering of your small business community. The rule that certain events cannot happen within 48 hours of July 4th, particularly events on private property, we're asking that this be amended. The rule that limits camping to user days instead of a total number of days. This new camping rule requires a special events permit that used to not be required, creating unnecessary work. We ask that this be amended. The rule that amplified music requires a special event permit. As business owners, we embrace live music and the culture it brings to our community. We are asking that this be amended to not require permits for events that end by 10:00 p.m. on private property. In summary, we respectfully request that the town staff and trustees create a transparent and open dialogue with the business owners in Buena Vista and include this important community in these decisions that have a direct impact on tourism and the economy. We greatly appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you. This letter, I believe, should have been emailed to all of you, so you certainly have a chance to look at it and review it as well. We certainly appreciate your time, and I know I don't have much time left here, so I'll just sort of say one last thing, which is these events, music festivals, these things that we're trying to promote and we'd like to have happen on the 4th of July weekend and the days that surround it. There are impediments, there are difficulties that go along with that, but we have the time, we have the resources to overcome those impediments. The town could help make that happen. The town, the public and private sector could work together to make that happen if that's what we wanted, if the town shows that those were things that were important to us. So we ask you to just consider if those are important, and if they are, let's work together to figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you, JJ.
I have a copy of the letter for the record, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Do we see any hands raised or chat?
Do not. Do not see anything.
Okay. So we will end this portion of public comment. Next item on the agenda are business items. First up is this the direction you were going, Philip? You talked item C next, but you're not. You're going these first ones first.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
That's Restore Grant for Riverside Wildfire Mitigation north of Buena Vista. Cindy is here to comment on that, and if you want to put it that way. Hi, Cindy.
Good evening. Good evening, trustees. Also with me tonight, we have Chief Bertram from Chaffey County Fire, Kent Maxwell from Chaffey Fire and Fire Camp. They're here to answer the really hard questions. And Marcus Seelig from National Forest Foundation. So we'll be tag teaming on this. This is a project that's been developed by the Envision Forest Health Council. The Forest Health Council, as you guys have heard before, is a partnership of the local land management agencies, the fire protection districts, and a whole bunch of other characters that you see on this slide. We're working to implement the Chaffey County Wildfire Protection Plan. And if you flip to the next slide, just a quick reminder that what we're trying to do with the wildfire plan, based on modeling that we did a year and a half ago, if we treat 30,000 acres in Chaffey County, the right 30,000 acres, we can reduce the risk that catastrophic wildfire poses to our community prioritized assets, which are the things you see here, from firefighter lives to water and infrastructure and homes and wildlife, by half. So we're working to do that. Last time we talked to you guys, I think we asked for match funding for a project at Railroad Bridge, which is here on the right side of the river, kind of the orange and red zones you see there. That map on the right is what we call our Chaffey Bank for the buck map. That shows where we can treat acres for the most benefit and the lowest cost, the most bang for the buck in Chaffey County. And we're working to take action on the stuff that's some of the stuff that's yellow and all the stuff that's in the shades of orange. We're also working to do that collaboratively and to pool those funds together in the Upper Ark Forest Fund, which Marcus is going to talk about a little bit. That's a mechanism to help us collate funding and put it on the ground collaboratively and efficiently. So we'll touch on that. Last time we talked, we asked for match funding for the Railroad Bridge project, which is on the right side of the river, north of BV. We were successful in winning those funds, and Marcus can give you a couple lines of update about when treatment is going to start there. What we want to talk to you about tonight is a follow-on grant to that same funder that we're writing, which basically extends that treatment across the river to the east and wraps it down, making it a bit more of an effective wildfire feature and a habitat feature. So that's the super big picture. I'll pause there and see if Chief Bertram or Kent want to add anything, and then after that, I'll hand over to Marcus to talk to you about the project. And you can go ahead and flip to the next slide, please. Chief Bertram, anything to add there? Anything I missed on the intro?
Oh, don't worry, get there. Just to make it.
Okay, fabulous. Again, if they have any really hard questions, we'll pass them to you. Let's see, Marcus, over to you about the project.
Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate it. And thank you, trustees, for letting us take the time today. So just a quick update on the project that you all voted to support last year. We have been working with the Forest Service. We issued a request for proposals to equipment operators to try to get that project implemented as soon as possible. Had really good response. We have a contractor all lined up, and we just heard from him today, actually, that he's going to be able to get in there this fall. So likely in November, we'll start treatment on that railroad bridge project, probably some mastication treatments to start. So really excited about that. The work is going to continue through the winter and into the spring as conditions allow. And we might be able to get it all wrapped up this year. It may extend though into next winter as well, but we're hoping we can get it all wrapped up this winter. So I'm really excited about that. The funding came through in a good way with your all support. So thank you for that. And just one other quick update too. Cindy mentioned the Upper Arkansas Forest Fund, which is an aggregation of funds to collaboratively get work done throughout the valley. We just received a huge win in that regard. I believe it was week before last, we heard from the Natural Resource Conservation Service that we're going to be awarded $5.6 million to implement treatments on private lands throughout Chaffee County. So that's going to really allow us to get a lot of good work done on the private side of the fence. And this project, the Riverside project, involves some of that private land work that we're going to put some of that RCPP, the funding from the Natural Resource Conservation Service to work on. So just a update on this project. If we could go to the next slide, I'll describe it a bit more. So as Cindy said, this project is on the west side of the river and the highway. It's about 9 miles north of Buena Vista. It encompasses about, in total, this says 350 acres of private land and about 85 acres actually of BLM land for a total of about 425 acres of project area. The private land is on 5 different parcels. And that's where we could put some of that NRCS money, the Natural Resource Conservation Service money, to work, as well as the Bureau of Land Management side, we're trying to get some funds together for as well. This restore grant that we're talking about today is going to potentially help us get work done on both sides of the fence. So a really cool project that attacks both private and public land priorities. The project is really geared towards, actually we can go to the next slide for this one, but before we, just to note, there's some really important infrastructure near this project that we're trying to protect. So some of that includes homes, ag lands, the highway. Otero Pump Station is right across the river from this, and as is the railroad bridge project that we talked about. There's also a natural gas pipeline and some power lines nearby as well. So it is an important area from a strategic area from a wildfire risk reduction project standpoint. Now we can go to the next slide because there's other benefits besides just wildfire risk reduction. It is really going to help wildlife habitat, and that's what the restore grant that we're going after is really focused on. So we are going to highlight that. What we do is open up the canopy, so take out some of the trees that are overcrowding the grasses and the herbaceous material that we need to grow. That'll help wildlife. It'll also help agricultural use of the land on the private side and on the public side of the fence. It's going to help water, obviously, if we can keep fire from burning too intensely in the landscape. That protects our water quality, and then overall forest health. So multiple benefits coming from this work. I will note too that this project, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Bird Conservancy, who is the key partner who helped put this project together, working with landowners and the Bureau of Land Management to plan it out. And so what we're doing, what NFF is doing, is really helping implement the Bird Conservancy's vision here and their planning efforts that they've put in. We can go to the next slide. So it is a treatment priority. Cindy showed the map that we all know came from the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. It falls within this orangish area on the west side of the highway. And by treating that, we're going to help reduce overall landscape fire risk by 50% if we can hit all these red and orange areas and some of the yellow areas. So it is a priority area for treatment. And that's the reason that we're focused on it, and we're going to put the ARPA Arkansas Forest Fund dollars into it. If we go to the next slide, we can talk about what that budget looks like. Oh, actually, this is the habitat slide first. So it is going to help with elk habitat and mule deer habitat, particularly summer range and winter range benefits. Now we can go to the next one. Project implementation. This is going to be a mix of what we call mastication, so similar to the Railroad Bridge project where we're chewing up the trees just to get them out of the way so that the forage can grow and so we don't have the high level of fuels on the ground. It's also going to involve some thinning of merchantable timber, and we'll be trying to get as much of that timber to local sawmills and create wood products as we can. So there is an industry benefit there as well. And NFF will be managing the contracts on the project with support from the Bird Conservancy. And then the next slide, please. So we estimate this project is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 to $750,000 to complete. That's to complete treatment across all 425 acres. Just so you know where that number is coming from, we're estimating somewhere between $1,200 to up to $1,600 an acre to do the work on both private lands and public lands. The overall ask of 750-ish is going to be broken down. These numbers are a little bit on the low side for what we want to anticipate, but they're probably realistic on where we'll land, meaning that we don't want to come up short. So these numbers are a little bit on the low end. So I'm giving you the high end as I talk, the low end here on the screen. So total project cost $750,000. We're going to put in a request to restore for around $250,000. We're going to bring in another $250,000 to up to maybe $350,000 from the Upper Arkansas Forest Fund. So that's again a combination of that NRCS RCPP funds that I mentioned. It's also includes a good portion of money coming from the county's common ground funds. So that's the sales tax based funds to support that work. National Forest Foundation is also going to be putting in around $50,000 of match that's not listed on here. And then we're going to be going after Arkansas River HPP or Habitat Partnership Program dollars. And what we're here to request is $10,000 from the town of Buena Vista to really round this out, show the restore grantors that there is local support for this and help get the project done. So that is the request, $10,000 to accomplish a $500,000 to $750,000 project that'll have multiple benefits for the town of Buena Vista. Cindy, anything you'd add to that?
No, that's a great overview, Marcus.
Any questions?
Board, do you have any questions? Philip, I saw you raise your hand. Go ahead.
On your desk, there's also a draft letter of support that goes along with this that came in today. So I think the request from the board is the thoughts on the $10,000 match, which would be if the board directed tonight, we would put into the draft 2022 budget. And then this letter of support along with it. And you'll just see down at the very bottom, if the board wanted to put in a different amount, but just kind of wording that so that it says that the town will prioritize those monies in the 2022 budget because we don't have an adopted budget yet. So just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Board, trustees, staff?
It's important.
Yep.
10,000 is a small amount of money to avoid a forest fire.
I know the one question I had, and I know we had mentioned this early on, the proximity to the Antero pump station. City of Colorado Springs been approached on this at all?
They have, and they have committed some support to the railroad bridge project on the other side of the river. There's some northernmost units of that project that are really close to Otero Pump Station. And they've committed to provide some support for that project. We haven't approached them about this, this project on the other side of the river yet.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustees, any other questions? Libby?
I think I heard you say that you feel confident that you can fill up the 750,000 if it needs to be done, 500 to 750,000. Is that right? That you think the funding is there for the rest if need be?
If we get this restore grant, that 250,000 and change that we're going to request, we feel confident that we can come up with the rest of it.
Right. Well, I agree. It's a very important project.
Then what about county contributions? Is the county contributing to this at all?
Yeah, two thoughts on that. County of Chaffey has in this year's budget and next year's budget and the year after budget, actually $30,000 to support facilitation of the wildfire plan and coordination of all this work. So they're in for that. I think we're also going to go to them in their Tuesday Board of County Commission meeting and ask them for a similar amount of matches as what we're asking you guys for. We just haven't made that request to them yet, but we're working on it. Great question.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, related to that, are the envision that the tax funding, is that part of this at all?
Yeah. So the common ground funds, the common ground funds, Common Ground has committed $1.6 million to the Upper Arkansas Forest Fund over the next 5 years. Yeah, so a big portion of it.
Great. And the other question I've got is in regards to prioritization or selection of these projects. I'm not sure it really is terribly relevant to tonight's conversation, but can you give me an idea of how projects are selected? I see some big red zones that would have been my priority just looking at a map, but I'm sure there's more to it than that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and there's a bit of an art and a science to it. So the science part has been done with that community wildfire protection plan, which outlined those red and orange areas. And that's where we're focusing our efforts now. The art side comes in with getting landowners, because a lot of that is on private land, landowners lined up. And when I say landowners lined up, we have to find landowners that are willing to let us treat their lands at this time and then get management plans together for them so we know what to do on their property. And so we're working in certain work circles right now through a program called Chaffey Treats, which is a big collaborative effort to focus on those highest priority work circles to get the landowners signed up. And as we get them signed up, they'll become ready for treatment. This project, as I mentioned, Bird Conservancy has been planning it, came up because Bird Conservancy had some luck working with the landowners in the area, and because it ties into some treatments that were done historically to create a really big, quote unquote, fire break. And so that's why this one was prioritized. Bird Conservancy had luck with the landowners, and it ties into some other past work.
Other questions? Comments? Motion? Approve, deny?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, Faye. Further discussion? I will reiterate Trustee Volpe's comments. There's a very large orange and red spot to the directly west of Buena Vista, and that dramatically affects our watershed. So I understand your process. I see how it works, but by golly, I'd like to see that on the next round. It'd be great. Just
Yeah,
plan
we
the
might.
buck.
Yeah, I know. We're aware of that, and actually, Kent or Chief Bertram, Kent, you may want to talk a little bit about the work that we have going on in that area. So you guys know there's been on the US Forest Service side of the line there has been some treatment done in the past. And I don't know, Ken or Chief B, if you want to say a few words about what we're working to do on the private side.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. So we do have some projects working from the Adventure Unlimited camp with their equip grant on what they're doing to land, a co-op project between AU and the Game Trail subdivision. And then we are working to try to get landowners down right in the North Cottonwood Creek area, which I know is a huge concern for the town of Buena Vista's water supply.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. Any other further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Fay,
Yes.
trustee Lucrezi,
Yes.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Volpe.
Yes.
Okay, Philip, and to be clear, we are putting this in that we will prioritize. And I'm going to assume there were no other comments, so the $10,000 would be in the letter. And we will put that on our 2022, work it into our budget.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else you need?
Nope, got it.
Good. Thank you very much, guys. Cindy. Guys,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
have a good
much.
evening all. Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is the Water Master Plan. Right Water Engineers will give us a review of the Water Master Plan. Joel, do you lead this, or are we going to jump right into Right Water?
I'll give just a little intro.
Okay.
And then turn it over to Mike Glade. So you all, this continues from about a month ago, September 14th, we had kind of an introduction to the Water Master Plan for y'all. We've been receiving some comments from members of the board, from some staff, from the public, including this evening, and the Water Advisory Board, of course. Over the last couple of weeks, Mike Glade with Right Water Engineers has been kind of compiling those comments, and some of those are easily addressed, or just kind of queries that we could answer pretty easily. And I know that there's been some adjustments to the plan, some little numbers and things like that. And there's some questions tonight that are good. They can easily be addressed. And then there's some others, some other changes. So this evening, Mike is here to kind of give us an overview of some of those changes, other parts about the plan, some other highlights. The trustees, you all might have some other questions, and we can take this opportunity to talk about some things. The idea would be at the end of the evening, trustees, hopefully there would be some kind of a motion. Continue the discussion to bring it back as a resolution for approval in the future, either consent agenda or on the agenda, assuming there's some changes to visit, to direct staff to find other, get additional input from other actors, and also any other kind of thing the trustees want to do. So I'll turn it over to Mike, and he can give you guys his presentation, and plenty of time for questions and answers, and see where we go after that. So Mike, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and the stage is yours.
Okay, great. Do you have my PowerPoint this time up, or do I need to share my screen?
Let's see. Mike will let you share your screen. Give it a shot.
Okay, let me tell me if you can view that properly, and if it's large enough, or if I need to go to display mode, if that's better. Is that better?
Go back to your previous.
Can you hear me?
previous meeting.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Mike, can you go back to your the previous view?
Jeff Parker, can you go off mute and tell me if you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, give me a thumbs up and I'll just talk, and I apologize. The sound went away. I apologize, everyone. The sound went away when I shared my screen. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. So please, I don't know if we should raise your hand or if I should stop sharing my screen for a second here to make sure. Let me see if that helps.
Can you hear us now, Mike?
Again.
Can you hear me, Mike? Looks like we got a volume issue with Mike's computer.
Oh, poor Mike. Poor guy.
He can send that email to, so, 'cause I never got that.
I apologize. Okay. Well, I apologize. I'm going to go through the presentation and I will try and figure out how I can hear you. I have listened in thoughtfully for the whole meeting thus far. So as far as this is a continuation, this is the 2021 Water Resources Master Plan, more of a detailed review of the draft report to try and get into some of the details and questions that have been raised thus far since the general presentation and introductory presentation. You know, again, I want to be very thankful for those that continue to contribute and participate in this, which includes town staff, the Board of Trustees and advisory board members, the citizens. We've gotten feedback as well, which is always nice. And then the team at Wright Water Engineers. And I want to recognize Trish Flood, who has supported and worked with the town for several decades. I don't think I acknowledged that in the first presentation, and I think that's important. So she brings a lot of experience to the table and also a very deep understanding of some of the challenges that the town faces as well as has overcome. As Joel mentioned, we in September 14th, we gave a very high level introduction just to really get people engaged in reviewing the document such that we could follow up with this review. Today, we'll go through some details, conclusions, and recommendations that look both at the short-term and the long-term horizon. So once again, just a quick review of the what for those that may have missed it or still have questions. I just want to make sure we're clear. We focused on infrastructure and water rights. We looked at treated water capacity, availability, and flexibility of your system. Water supply versus demand growth projections. I know it's important whether the Board of Trustees, how they look at that, but as far as a water right perspective, there's many different things that go into that and factors that can change over time. You know, we considered 3 growth scenarios. It is something that we look at in a water master plan. One was at historic growth rates, which may have been considered lower at 1.3% or 25 to 30 SFE per year. A growth rate of 50 SFE per year that was demonstrated several times in the last 10 years. And the growth rate of 70 SFE per year that's been demonstrated in the last few years. So I think it's important to understand those are the scenarios we looked at. Really looking at infrastructure, and I apologize if these are difficult to see, but I just wanted to summarize kind of the key structures that go into the infrastructure of the town of Buena Vista. It consists of both the distribution system as well as a series of wells, the infrastructure gallery, and treated water storage, above ground storage. So this is something that Sean and his team manage and maintain. And it's important to understand that it's fairly extensive and requires quite a bit of work. But these are the structures that we looked at in looking at both infrastructure as well as water rights and water supply. In the infrastructure, focusing on the infrastructure in particular, looking at capacity constraints. And I really apologize, I can't hear you. I'm going to try and figure that out. But because I think this was a question Joel had let me know that I needed to spend a little time on table 14, looking at capacity constraints. There's a max day demand, which is, these units are 1 million gallons per day. And one thing that we can correct in the final version of the plan is that we use 1 million gallons per day when we're describing treatment capacity and infrastructure capacity. And then we use cubic feet per second when describing water rights and water supply. So what I've done, and I will revise this in the plan, is I've also done some comparisons to make it simpler in review, that the max day demand is 1.49 MGD. Water rights minimum supply available in a dry year is 1.94 MGD. In infrastructure, since we're focused on that in this slide, has a constraint of 1.32 MGD. That consists of the infiltration galleries capacity, as well as the supply from Arkansas well number 3 down in the park. Now, as you can see, that is less than your max day demand, but you can compensate for that through your treated water storage, above ground storage. Again, I put in here kind of a comparison of the CFS versus MGD to hopefully support review of this and how it compares to water rights. As far as infrastructure review, continuing with capacity, the town is investigating water treatment plant upgrades to treat surface and groundwater to meet future demands or regulatory requirements. And it's important to understand that regulatory requirements in this case can be the GWIDI, which is groundwater under the direct influence of surface water. And what that triggers is a need to treat the water to a different standard. So again, water treatment plant upgrades can be based on future demands, but can be based on regulatory requirements. The capacity looks right now by Sean and his team is upgrade and expand to 2 million gallons per day. There are studies being conducted right now on that with future potential for additional expansion as needed. So allowing the town to be able to expand if needed. Flexibility, looking at providing a system that can effectively treat both surface and groundwater. Again, currently you're treating groundwater through the infiltration gallery. You have not treated, you have a plant that did treat surface water, and right now that's not being performed, but allowing yourself that flexibility would provide strength to the system itself and just options during dry years. Infrastructure capacity, again, looking at investigating the infiltration gallery expansion to provide increased volume. The infiltration gallery right now is a very robust system, but looking at the town, and Sean and his team and Joel are looking at expansion of that gallery under current conditions, and it's something that's being investigated. I mentioned treated water storage. As I said, that can be used as a buffer during peak demand, and that provides some capacity with the 1.76 million gallons stored in the lower zone and upper zone of 1.5 million gallons. It also provides your fire flow supply, which is about 660,000 gallons, since you need to be able to provide 3,500 gallons per minute for 3 hours to meet potential fire flow demands. Flexibility is really around water supply through the use of the existing Arkansas well number 3, which you have the capacity to do, and constructing and looking at the construction of Arkansas well number 4, which will require augmentation. So that's something that we've been investigating, and Sean and his team have been investigating for some time. So these aren't new concepts. Town staff is aware and robust and vigilant in looking at options and what would need to occur to make sure that the town is meeting all demands. So from an infrastructure standpoint, the conclusions are there is a risk of groundwater under the direct influence of surface water to the infiltration gallery. That's why we're looking at providing additional treatment, or the town's looking at providing additional treatment. The town's also looking at infrastructure. As I mentioned, there's some capacity issues. And then Arkansas well number 4 is being investigated as far as the siting and the location, as well as the use of that water. I'm going to, before I jump into, recommendations, again, use Arkansas well number 3, construct Arkansas well number 4, use portions of the existing water treatment plant facilities to upgrade the process and expand capacity, expand the infiltration gallery, and perform a water rate study. So these are things that we're talking with staff currently at, and other consultants are working with staff on. Before I get into water rights, I'm going to try and find a way to open up for questions. I really apologize that for some reason I cannot hear the room, but let me attempt to do that. And I'm not having any luck. I apologize. Jeff, can you hear and let me know if I can continue on or if I need to find a way to stop?
I can hear you fine.
Water supply review from a water rights standpoint. Again, infrastructure is the physical nature and delivery. Water rights are both legal, the legal obligations and the legal rights that the town holds. I want to get into that. The town has a strong existing foundation of senior water rights to support the current community through dry year scenarios. Buena Vista Waterworks winter withdrawals are strong November through March, and other rights April through October. So that's a very strong point that needs to be considered, that the water rights themselves are strong and robust. Purchased Frying Pan Arkansas project water is a valuable source of backup supply. However, as we're noticing in extended dry years now, future availability is not assured. Approximately 1,000 acre feet are in account now, with an average current use of about 100 acre feet per year. This can change depending on demands and water conditions and the extent or depth of a dry year, but it's being watched by staff. Water demands currently, again, the report, I apologize, there's a lot of tables. We've tried to simplify those as much as possible. But one thing that we looked at is the calculated water demand per single family equivalent from both a raw water and a metered water standpoint. This is important. Raw water is what is being diverted from the stream or a groundwater source that's accounted for by the town, but meets the water right restrictions that the town has. Metered water is what is delivered, treated and delivered and measured to your customers. So it's important for us from a water rights standpoint to consider the average water raw demand of about 350 gallons per day per SFE. From a treated water standpoint, we're looking at 264 gallons per day per SFE. Just this was in the report, and it's a good breakdown of residential and showing that a majority of your demands are from residential uses. It also gets in the restaurants, schools and buildings, hotels and motels, and then gets into multifamily type use. So it's important for a community to know where their water's at. In particular, if you do get into conservation, this can help inform of where you will focus some of your efforts and communications around areas of opportunity. All of these are important, but you may not, you may want to focus on the areas of the biggest opportunity first. Water demands currently, as I noted, are 350 gallons per day. I wanted to provide a slide that would give you some idea of how you may compare to other communities as well. Metered and historically reported at 293, which equates to about 163 gallons per capita per day. That's metered. So looking at that, Denver water was in 2011 was about 211 gallons per capita a day. 165 in 2016, and now they're reporting about 140. So, I want to know that the town has opportunities, but every community typically looks at improving these numbers. CSU extension saying in 2014, I apologize, it's not real recent data, but that use was about 170 gallons per capita a day. Town of Castle Rock currently has a 5-year running average that shows 120 gallons per capita a day on their website. So there are opportunities there, but I wanted to let you know that that you're in the ballpark for what you would expect from a metered demand standpoint. Water demands currently, it's important, unaccounted water or non-revenue water, I think I mentioned that last time a bit, is the water that can be lost through whether it's leaks or non-metered use or things of that nature or construction demands. We had calculated that, you know, the percent loss was about 24% on average for the last 5 to 6 years. It's important to note that in talking with Sean that in 2019, they found a very large leak and they were able to drop that number to 18%. So that's impressive. In looking at how that may be, and I apologize, there was another slide I thought that showed you what I expect averages to be in the 10 to 20% range for many towns and communities. So 18% is within the range of what you would hope to get to. Of course, lowering that number would help your revenues and would potentially help some water supply. When it comes to population growth, we were looking at, again, we were tasked with looking at several scenarios for and how the water rights portfolio and infrastructure may fare against population growth. 2020 had an SFE of 1810 with a reported population of 2855, which again is 1.8 people per persons per SFE. So we looked at population growth to calculate your SFEs, and here's the SFEs per year that you've experienced over time. Then looking at the projected SFE growth, I picked 2030 because that happens to be a critical number that if we look at dry years and what the current portfolio could support, 2030 kind of sticks out. So with a 1.3 annual increase, your SFEs would be 2060, 50, you'd be at 2310, and 70 SFEs per year, you'd be at 2510. So that gives you an idea of the order of magnitude of growth that you could potentially review as you look at population and potential future forecasts. Now this, I'm going to take my time a little bit on this one. I know it's a bit of an eye chart, but really, and I'm even gonna have to put on my reading glasses, but what we did in tables 7, 8, and 9, my understanding is there were some questions on this. So I'm gonna slow down a bit. We looked at average years, dry year, and dry year with conservation. Our ultimate goal was to look at what SFE can be supported under your current water resources portfolio. So this is where I mentioned in table 14, the relationship between MGD and CFS. And I apologize that from a water resource standpoint, we've jumped at CFS on you. But we've looked at an average year scenario and what your water resource portfolio can provide from average water rights per month. So I'm going to stick with June for an average year. Your water rights provide 4.4 CFS. Your max daily demands is 2.31 CFS, which equates to the max daily demand of 1.5 or so MGD. We calculate the supported SFE by looking at the water available divided by the demand multiplied by your current SFE level. That's where we come up with the 3448 as being the supported SFE level. We do the same thing for the dry year and the dry year with conservation scenarios. Looking at, you can see that some of the water rights in a dry year scenario drop off because they're not available. And they're not available because the flows are reduced in the creeks and streams. And we've looked at the call records, and Patricia Flood has an idea of what the calls look like during dry year scenarios. With that, you can see for June itself, you get a drop to 3.98 water rights, but actually in July, the critical month for a dry year, you drop to 3 CFS for water rights. And we do the same calculation. Now, in applying a dry year with conservation scenario, we looked at improving water demands by 20%. And that's how we came up with the 3157. So we simply improved water demands by 20% in a dry year scenario. So the maximum supported SFEs under your current water rights portfolio, this is your current portfolio, for an average year of 3448, dry year with conservation 3157, and a dry year 2526. Again, you're at 1810 SFEs currently. So in conclusion, looking at growth rates, the table here shows you where we believe water stress, severe water stress would occur under these growth scenarios, a 1.3% growth, 50 per year SFE growth rate, or 70 per year. For, let's say with the dry year scenarios, for 1.3% growth, your dry year critical year would be 2046. For a growth rate of 50 SFEs per year, 2034. And for a higher growth rate of 70 SFEs per year, your critical year would be 2030. Now, why is that important? It's not just growth that can impact this. There's some things that we can't predict necessarily, and that is climate change could impact average temperatures. In fact, the report we show that average temperatures are increasing for the town of Buena Vista. The runoff timing's changing, which could change our availability of water. And the Trans Mountain diversions could be impacted. Many communities are looking at the potential impact on the Colorado River and the calls on the west slope and how that could impact Trans Mountain diversions. So that's one of the reasons why a 2030 horizon, if you have higher growth rates, is critical, because securing water rights can take time, as town staff well knows. Recommendations from our water supply include conservation. I personally believe that conservation can help in many ways, whether it's for growth reasons or whether it's based on the changing climate changes and climate impacts as well. You can execute conservation through community engagement, incentives, and design standards. There's lots of successful existing efforts to review with Denver Water, the EPA Water Sense program, and people are willing and happy to share this. I know many of your colleagues and peers in other communities have worked very hard and diligently around this, just like I know some people in the town of Buena Vista have as well, and they're more than happy to share those wins in their efforts. Non-revenue water improvements, something that Sean's working very diligently on. Again, this is where I sum up that the 20-30% range, even as high as 50%, which is unacceptable. Typically, you'll see 10 to 15%. And Public Works has a plan around this. They've always had a plan. Sean and his team are always looking for leaks. It's something that they're very diligent around, but it's something that they're concerned about and can continue to investigate. So recommendations on water is look at water rights and/or water storage. I know some of the questions prior to this were, what about underground storage? We'd have to look at the hydrogeology of the area. It may not be conducive to underground storage. Surface water storage can take time, so that's something that should be investigated and can be. And partnerships to expand storage in Cottonwood and/or Rainbow Lakes. That's been identified previously, and that's something that the community and the town of Buena Vista can continue to look into. Senior water rights, if you are going to look at that, and hopefully Right Water can help with that, there are some requirements. Not all water rights are created equal. I think those viewing this presentation understand that. Really, if you're on Cottonwood Creek, those would be the ones that we, in line with where some of the fire mitigation efforts was pointed out, we should focus some efforts. Pre-December 17th, 1872. The reason for that is that would assure that water purchase that have that priority date could be put to beneficial use during a dry year. It can, as I noted, it can take years for water rights and a decade or more if constructing storage reservoirs. And upstream and downstream water users are all looking for water supply as well. I'm sure you're well aware of that too. As communities grow and as communities experience changes in their water right portfolios that may not be as senior as they need, they're looking for other sources to support their current, existing, and future demands. So recommendations from water supply review include continuing to purchase Frying Pan Arkansas project water as available, track changes in growth and water demands on an annual basis, so you have an understanding of where you are and where you're going. track changes in Colorado water regulations. Again, treatment standards, groundwater under the direct influence of surface water is very important. And continue to be proactive and engaging in participating in the watershed as you're doing. You can see that on your website. I've read it in reports and I'm aware of those efforts. I want to thank you. I apologize wholeheartedly that I didn't leave room for questions during the presentation. I'm going to try and rejoin and so that I can take your questions as you have them. I know Trish is prepared to do so as well. And I do apologize, but thank you very much.
Well, wait, Michael will get on board here in just a minute because yeah, we're looking forward to asking him some questions. A lot of good info in there.
Yeah.
Again, trustees, please do take this opportunity to ask questions and absorb. As far as addressing like recommendations and what to do next, we do the plan and that kind of thing. We are planning to have that as a separate conversation soon. So this is more informational as far as more so than, hey, what are we gonna do now kind of stuff. So that's kind of.
Yep. This, as we've seen before, it gives us a timeline basis. And that's kind of what we need to know as trustees is what are the timelines, and obviously what we saw 10 years ago is not what we're seeing now. And I think that's really what amped this all up was what do we do now? Because it's brought other things to the table faster, best way to put it. And that being the treatment plant, number one, I mean, that really amped up real quick. Obviously there's some other things, conservation, I think. Maybe that's an easy pursuit and that's a cheap way to find water. If we can get conservation, if we can get people on board for that. So Trish, can you hear us?
And I'm back as well too. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Questions, trustees?
One of the questions had to do with, the use of dry field ditch. And that could be used potentially for augmentation of Arkansas well 3 and 4, which would provide redundancy. If there was a problem with water supply on Cottonwood Creek due to fire or contamination, it's great to have a secondary redundant supply, and dry field ditch could serve that need.
Would that also replace what we're purchasing, the frying pan arc water? Would it, because that's augmentation water also, is it not? What we use that for?
That's not, it can't be used directly for augmentation, but by working with Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District, we're able to do kind of an exchange. I would recommend you keep purchasing the fry arc water, and just with the realization that in a dry year, we might face some curtailment on that.
Yep. Trustees, questions, thoughts? I guess the other question I had was the water board kind of I'm not going to say glanced at it, picked it apart. What were some of their thoughts, or what do they feel about this is being brought forward to us right now? Were there any comments?
There were comments, one by Roy Gertzen, who was Public Works, and he said this is the best report he's seen, and so he's very happy with it. There were some, working with Sean, there were some kind of math things that they were fixing on. I think Sean passed that on, just some making sure the different tables matched up and some of that. And then there were some questions really on doing a water rate study and doing a conservation plan. And are those separate, or do we fuse them? And what's the timing of those kinds of things, which we'd kind of like to wait when we talk about the recommendation sort of.
Right.
But that was really kind of what to do next was there.
Was more of their conversation as compared to, okay.
Sean maybe heard more directly from some of the engineer minds.
Yep.
So,
And I'll agree with Roy compared to what I've seen in the past. This is a more detailed, complete plan, definitely, hands down. Good plan. Yes, Gina.
I would just like to say thank you to everybody who put so much hard work into this. I learned a ton just by reading through this document multiple times. There's still some areas where I'm like, wait, I have to reread it like 5 times to really let it sink in. But I view water as, it's like gold, and seeing what's happened to other places around the country. Look at Eastern Sierra, places like that where, people came in, kind of ate their lunch and lost the water rights, to their towns and things like that. And as it becomes to get more scarce and climate change, everything else, I think what I see here is so many different options, which is great in different areas that we don't have to rely all on just one thing to hopefully help us out. And so I really appreciate the diversification, I guess you could say, of the plan. And just kind of want to say, I really appreciate everything you guys put together. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Other questions, Libby?
I have a few small questions, but one is a big question. In terms of our growth, I'm glad to see that you're using some different models of growth, 50 and 70 SFEs per year. It could go even higher than that. What concerns me is the timing of building out the expanded infiltration gallery and water treatment plant. And 2030 is not very far away, really. How much of that work can we get done ahead of when the growth catches up to it? Any ideas on that?
Get more water.
clarify the.
I was going to say, do you want to go with that, Joel?
One little thing, that 2030 deals with our water rights portfolio, and the treatment capacity is not 2030. That is sooner than that. So they're kind of two different deadlines, if you will. And Sean probably can speak to the treatment capacity, that project and the expansion of that gallery system and things, and the timing of that a little bit better.
Is this a good time to do that, Sean, or you ready to talk about that?
It's perfect time to do it. Yeah. So, great questions. And Joel is exactly right. So, what we're trying to do is get first of all, I guess, figure out how we're going to approach it, the water plant expansion project, present the options and the opportunities. We're going to anticipate, breaking ground, by October of 2022 or sooner, maybe September, October. So, phasing that project in about a year from now, once we have the design and all the pieces in place to kind of nail down what we're going to do. So we have some options that we'll be presenting to you guys for review as well. So we had hoped to maybe have something constructed late 2023, but maybe 2024 is more realistic. But that's kind of where we're at.
I think the hard part about, and it always has been for me, is separating the master plan between project plans. The master plan is, this is what you have. This is how it's used. The project plan comes in separate of how do you modify or how do you complement what you have in a master plan. And I think that's the hard part of separating the two, because they are two separate beasts, really. One is telling you what you have to do and how soon. And then the other side of that is, okay, how do we get there? And that's a totally different conversation. And that's what you said is, This one here is showing all of our rights, how everything works and how it comes together and the potential of when that graph meets and says we're out. Then you have the other line that comes in and says, when will you run out of treated water? And that's really two different concepts, actually. And so that's what you're saying. It's a different conversation, but it's already in the works. We already have that in our capital improvement plan. We're already working on it. So, I think we're good. The one thing to keep in mind, and I think, and actually Mike mentioned it, is you never stop looking for water. And we've seen that here just locally. We missed out on some. And I will say, I say that only we couldn't even afford it, what they paid for that water. We couldn't even have touched it. So we just have to keep watching, usually what we have to do. Go ahead.
Another question. It has to do with the maximum daily demand as to what's really included in that. And what happens when we have a dry year, we have everybody watering their properties, and then we have a fire? How does that fit with maximum daily demand?
Mike, you're on mute. There you go.
When you say fire, are you talking a local fire, a community
A
fire? Or
big
you're
fire, like a wildfire.
like a
that gets in-
wildfire? Okay, understand that. So if you're in a dry year and your demands are up, I mean, there's always concerns with the capacity and the release of, and how water will come down. The water quality can be impacted. So those are things that can certainly impact the treatment. And I think Sean's working on that capacity. But as Denver Water can attest, major fires in the impacts and removing taste or impacting their storage reservoirs was huge. So a major fire could definitely have some impacts on water supply. Demands, I wouldn't, I would expect hopefully the community would come together, and I wouldn't expect to see demands necessarily go up from what we're projecting or what you've seen thus far, but supply could be impacted. I don't know if you have a different opinion on that, Trish, but that's how I would be concerned about.
I would think that with a fire, you would probably want to declare an emergency and request, or even if necessary, mandatory restrictions on outdoor watering, and just gain the citizen support to conserve that water. That does point to the benefit of having a redundant water source too.
Thank you.
Other questions? Norm, do you have anything? Okay, Devin? Well, Cindy?
I want to go back a little bit to the underground water storage, because you're saying to increase storage at Rainbow Lake or Cottonwood Lake, but in the past, the Forest Service hasn't allowed it. Did I understand you right on that?
Well, Rainbow Lake is privately held, and they do have an agreement with the Upper Ark to do some storage there. They have to maintain a certain level because it's a resort. We talked to the owner. It's a long family owner, and maybe there would be opportunity to go and dredge the lake and do something there, but that would be, I don't have a lot of kind of hopes and dreams tied to that. Cottonwood Lake is a Forest Service, and there's a lease on that, or a special use permit that the Upper Ark holds on that, and they will only allow one special use permit on that lake, and they've given it the Upper Ark, and we're tied in with that. We did enter an agreement with the Upper Ark like 5 years ago. Yeah, 6 years or 7 years ago, to have storage as part of that for us. We have 75 acre feet of project water that is decreed that can be stored up there, but there is no active storage space because of that. So we are working with the upper arc to kind of redo the dam up there that will give us more storage. Half the lake, the dam is built with the exit pipe in the middle. And so none of the water below the exit pipe can effectively leave the lake. And so it's unavailable. So there's 125 acre feet up there, but practically only 60 some odd acre feet can be extracted. And so the upper arc has that, but once we go through all the paperwork and everything, and we can design it and finish building it, then we'll have probably by this agreement about close to 40 acre feet of storage.
And in that, having above ground storage as water becomes more critical, what is the evaporation? I mean, we're over my head on knowledge here, I'm asking. Is there a great deal of evaporation loss where it would make more sense to have it underground and protected and not lose so much water to evaporation?
There could be. I mean, right now, like, and Trish can speak to, I guess, the evaporative loss and all that works, but it's pretty intricate.
Yes, there is evaporation loss, but that is shared with Upper Ark. With the town's involvement, we would prorate that based on the amount of storage. What's attractive about Cottonwood Lake is its location upstream of the town's well number 2, which is located adjacent to the water treatment plant. So that's why that's a good reservoir site. As far as underground storage, that, you know, does save on evaporation, but it's, yeah, it gets down to site specific details and how that can best be used. A lot of timing issues, what's your distance from the stream and how you're going to fill it, and some items like that, the geology.
Thank you.
As a correlation, Sean or Trish, do you know what our evaporation, what we pay or water we have to share for McPhelmy Lake? Do you know offhand what that is? Sorry.
Wait, I'm.
Just as a correlation, just to give an idea of just how
Yeah.
much it would be, just a thought.
Ponds on top of it.
I think it's about two feet roughly evaporation, and I think we're paying and Sean, maybe is it 1.5 acres, something like, I think it's like 3 to 4 feet of evaporation we may have to pay.
Yeah, I want to say it seems like we're about 4 acre feet of evap losses on Town Lake. And I could be off, but I thought it was something close to that.
That's just, that's kind of a comparative number, Cindy, for just, you know, that's the evaporation. Now you compare that to Cottonwood. And you think of the size difference between the two, and obviously we only have a percentage of that on Cottonwood, but if it's 3 to 4 acre feet in McPhelmy, you can imagine what it is at the Cottonwood. That's a bunch of water. That's a lot of loss. The other thing that I understood about underground storage is you had to, it seemed like, put into it for a couple of years before you could even source back out of it. If I remember right, it was really strange the way they laid that out. I guess the best way I can remember it.
Yeah, I think you're referring to the travel time. When you put it in, it takes, maybe a certain amount of time. Depends on the gradient towards the stream, and so it's not immediate.
Right, and that's what it was. I knew it wasn't an immediate return. So, okay. Any other questions? We have a request from staff. And obviously, it's not specific to tonight, but is there a motion to ask staff to bring back a resolution? Do you want more information? Additional input from, I mean, how comfortable do we feel right now with this presentation? And I would, if we could, get the updated PowerPoint. Yeah, send out, appreciate it. Are there any other direction for staff?
I'm seeing no concerns amongst the board. I'd move to bring the draft back as a resolution on the consent agenda next meeting or whenever appropriate.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion.
I'll second that.
Second, Nyberg. Further discussion? Taking into consideration comments, is there, and it wouldn't have crossed my mind, is there a reason to contact the Sand District? And what are their, can they handle the water we're talking about? I mean, obviously that's, I don't want to say it's not my concern. We're town, we're looking at supplying water, but can they deal with what goes out the pipe?
It's a great question. And I think one of the things that comes out of this plan that's so much better than previous plans is the accuracy, or at least based on what we've seen with growth rates and the projected growth rates. We actually have something to share now with the Sand District. So we have had discussions about growth. In fact, our planning department includes the sanitation and discussions about upcoming developments, things that are coming through. But now we have data to actually provide them. So I think that's a really good question that I think we can turn around and share this and say, hey, do you guys have concerns? Does this, what red flags do you have based on your planning? But they look at a lot of this stuff too. They see what's going on.
Sure. And I know we've had on the radar to had set up a meeting with them too, a joint meeting with sanitation. COVID killed that. That's when we were going to do it, and it kind of died there. But any other questions, comments?
Duff, can I make one other comment?
Yes, please, Joe. Go ahead.
A question about like fine rights and things, and hopefully there's a better understanding of why the Arkansas River right, the dry field ditch was important, and we save up money for those things to buy new water. That was the first water since the 70s, right? That we've purchased, and we still haven't been able to use those. And we also have the water dedication fee that the board has put in place, which the water rate study will inform that if we move forward, when we move forward with that. Doing some quick math. I mean, the whole idea was, yeah, we have money in the bank, let's use it. We have an opportunity to pounce on it. And within like 3 years, that any the new growth, that water dedication fee will have replenished that amount of money. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
Exactly, and that water was very important for augmentation with well number 4 anyway, being under the influence of the Arkansas. I know that was a priority when we saw that, so definitely. Any other comments, questions for staff? We have a motion and a second. I will take a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Lucrezi?
Yes.
Trustee Rowe?
Yes.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Swisher?
Yes.
Trustee Wilby?
Yes.
Thank you all. We'll look for that. And I believe the motion was to put it on consent.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Staff reports.
I'll speed this along so we can get through other staff reports, but my report is on page 36. Just some opening comments that I shared with the board here, but I really appreciate the.
Excuse me, Philip, I'm sorry, I didn't thank Trish,
Yeah, Trish
and Mike for their presentation. I apologize for that.
Thank you. No thanks needed. I apologize for any delays I caused.
No worries. That's technology. We love it.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry, Philip.
No, you're great. Appreciate that. A lot of effort goes into the budgeting process from a staff standpoint, advisory boards. And so I'm pleased that we're going to get to that later tonight. Also expressing appreciation for the board and the complexities responsibilities you have to look at a very big picture when it comes to the budget. You all heard about I'm talking a lot about water. You'll see that that's a big thing in our upcoming budget. And then a couple of other capital plans, projects you'll see in the draft later tonight. So I just wanted to hit a few updates on some of our key projects. The master planning out around the rodeo grounds, including the old Chicago Ranch or the property that Tribune now owns, that process kicked off in September. And so we're excited about the company NES that's doing this master planning work with us. Staff's already providing quite a bit of input and connections to our various advisory boards in that area. So they're going to be participating or conducting some more community public input sessions in early November. And we are hopeful to have a plan back to you all in early 2022, ideally in March, so that we can wrap that whole planning process up at that time. So we are very excited. We did receive several responses to our RFP for the new police station, architecture and engineering, or A&E. And core staff team, you'll see there, we did conduct interviews of our 2 finalists. And we are ready to make a recommendation on the team we want to move forward on this really, really important project with. So next meeting, I do all that to build up for the next meeting, 26, you will see the recommendation and the contract for that. Main Street light replacement, we're hoping to see that proceed this month, knock on hard plastic that we'll start seeing that work, but we know that the materials are starting to be received and excited about that. The Montessori school, we do have a lease in place with them for the chapel. So they've got quite a bit of work ahead for them. And I think they're targeting early 2022 to be up and running. And we keep pushing and plugging along here on the Arizona Trail and Bridge project. It's unfortunately just, I don't know, just one of those things. So CDOT has been in their final review. They've come back and they've identified some things that they did not, weren't up to their requirements in the engineering. So we've been facilitating some back and forth to try to wrap up that review. Wanted to mention that and that it's still taking some staff time. We're still pushing it as a high priority project. I don't think that what we're dealing with right now is going to change ultimately when this project will be built, because we've already moved it into 2022 construction. Definitely wanted to acknowledge that. With that, I will take any questions.
Questions for administrator? And I'll just, excuse me, kind of toss it out there. Staff has a lot on the table again. Just, hearing about the party out at the rodeo grounds and this now and everything else and budget. So let's keep that in mind when it comes to adding to the plate, if it were. Thank you, Philip. Town treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Trustees. My memo for my staff report is on page 38 of the packet. It's the real basic report. It sums up the expenditures and outlines all of the checks written since the last report that are over $2,000. And since I'm going to be monopolizing the conversation over budget later on, that's all I got. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions from Michelle? Good, we get to wait until budget. And we're going to get you.
Yeah, sure you will.
And thank you, Michelle. Chief. Dean, what do you have for us?
Good evening, board. Thank you for your time. I believe my report starts on, looks like page 40. I'll just be real brief. We did a coffee with a cop on October 6th over at Brown Dog. We want to thank them for hosting that. It was very successful. It was a great way for the community to interact with police. And we hope to do a couple more of those over the next year. So we can use some other coffee shops as well and continue that event. On October 6th, also Sergeant Garcia and I met with Vista Mental Health Services. Had a really great meeting with them, learned about their regional assessment center that they're building. That's really going to be a great resource for first responders up here to put people in touch with some excellent mental health resources. And there's also going to be a sort of detox facility attached to that, which can really help us too. Because right now we have to use Alamosa for our detox facility. Something else that's really cool about that regional assessment center and working with Vista is they've started a co-responder unit. So when police or medical encounter a person in crisis, oops, sorry, had to turn my radio down. We can coordinate with the co-responder, a mental health professional, to help us with certain calls like that. So that's a great resource. The last thing, last couple things here. This October 26th marks the 25th anniversary of the line of duty death of Buena Vista police officer Trevor Stazak. He was killed on the line of duty by a drunk driver that night. So we have some events planned later on in the month. I've been in contact with his family and his widow, and I wrote I guess you'd call it an article or some information about Trevor, which is going to be in our quarterly newsletter. So a lot of the citizens that didn't know him can learn about him and what happened to him. And on the 26th, I hope to coordinate with Chief Tidwell, and we'll have a memorial event out on the highway around mile marker 145, just for law enforcement to honor his memory. And the last thing, I also attached it in my packet, is there was a really nice article in School Safety magazine, which is published by the National School Resource Officer Association. So it's a national magazine, and there was a really good article about Megan DiGirolamo, who is our school resource officer. And I talked about our school resource officer program. So that was exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for Dean?
Where's the regional assessment center located? Is that in Salida?
Yes, it's going to be near the Heart of the Rockies campus, as I understand it. And I believe there's going to be an open house in November, and hopefully it'll be fully up and running in April, if I understood their timeline correctly.
So the co-responders, they would respond from that facility, I would assume?
Yeah, so they're actually available to us now, so we can call them, and they're available. Some of them are on duty 8 hours a day, and then after hours, they're on an on-call status. And they're able to respond depending on where they are in the county to our location to help us.
Awesome. That's a great resource.
Great recognition for Megan. Great recognition. That's a good thing.
It
For our
is a good
town.
thing. We're proud of her.
And your department, Dean.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dean. Next is Earl.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. My memo report is on page 49 of the packet. I'll try to be brief, but as usual, we have a lot going on. And as always, our doors are always open. So come on by, say hi, give us a call, so we can help answer any questions that the trustees might have. But at the last meeting, we gave a presentation for the board to consider 2 resolutions to support 2 big grants. That was a big part of the last month's for our capital improvement project planning. So thanks for the support there. Those grants are in. They've been reaching out to us. We've been doing some small tweaks and answering a few questions. Again, we should have some information back on both the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant and the CPW grants in March of 2022. I just want to say a big thanks to those that helped. Leonard and Jennifer from Peak to Peak, and also Kelly Collins from our Trails Advisory Board and BBSC. They're instrumental in putting together those grants and helping us get everything together. For our Rec Advisory Board, we're still meeting monthly. Dan Hom has opted to step away from his role due to being too busy with his work obligations. So we do have an open position. We're working on fulfilling that from within, and then we'll have another temporary or non-voting alternate position opening up, and we'll be sure to advertise that well throughout the community. We've hired our Rec Admin Assist. We're really excited to bring on a new staff member, and she'll be starting November 3rd, part-time for our department, helping us out with all things administrative duties. So we're very happy as a department to have her come on board. I wrote in here a piece on the restructuring of the Buena Vista Rec Department, at the bottom of the second page, but I'll get into that in a little bit more detail towards the end of my report, because it's a little bit longer conversation. 2022 capital projects. We've been working with Philip and Michelle and our team and our board to find a balance of projects that we can handle over the next couple of years. And I've listed them out in our report. And right now our advisory boards are weighing in on priorities, but we're also doing a continued research and trying to see what we can accomplish. And it looks like these top tiered projects fit within our initial budget for capital projects. So we're excited to try to tackle some of these long-awaited and also newly surfacing desires for our facilities, and also for the use of our whole community out there in the rec world. We're still excited about the Boys and Girls Campus potentially coming. Had to provide a little bit of clarity to our board at our last meeting, just bringing them up to speed with what this could bring to our community. So again, we've got our pulse on that and think it would be an awesome addition to our town. Pickleball phase 1 is complete. Thanks to Steve Miles and ACA and Peak to Peak in the town of Buena Vista for making that all happen. We're going to wait until we see what happens with our grant applications. Hopefully we can dive into phase 2 in summer of 2022. Kind of off subject, but great job to Joseph on his community input for town-owned lands as it relates to the Carbonate Streets potential development. I went to that last night. I was informing our board about it just to make sure they have their eyes on it in case there's any need for trail conversation or pocket parks, etc. But the meeting was very well run. And then you will see our team back here on the 9th giving a presentation to the board about our highlights from 2021 and goals and objectives for 2022. So excited to do that presentation to the board. Programming side, fall soccer's in full swing. So is men's and women's volleyball. Pickleball instruction continues with clinics for never evers to learn the sport and helping to raise money for our courts project. Boys and girls basketball for kindergarten through 6th graders is starting up next week. That's one of our bigger programs. We have about 165 people enrolled so far. And then adult 4-on-4 indoor basketball starts. We had a fun little thing a couple weeks ago. We had a bike giveaway day. All these donated bikes have been given to our center. We've been rehabbing them, fixing them a little bit here and there, and then giving them back to the community. So that was a neat project we did 2 weeks ago. Things are still busy at the community center. A lot of people coming and going, a lot of meetings, gatherings. The schools are using our buildings, so it's the county for health and awareness seminars. So just happy to see our building back in use. And then for special events, we're kind of coming to the end of our busy season, but we're really getting ready to plan 2022. A lot of people are meeting up with Ben to discuss what they would like to see happen in 2022. And we still have a few events coming up. The UAS welcome reception on October 17th. And then Avery Parsons will have their annual trick or treat parade up and down Main Street. So thank you to everyone that helps make that happen, especially PD and our fire support services. And then trunk or treat will be on the night of the 31st. And then the Chamber's planning a pretty awesome Christmas opening to bring that back from being on a hiatus from last year. Any questions thus far in my report? Before I go into my last subject area? Nope.
Move on, Philip.
Okay.
Philip. Sorry, Earl.
Okay.
So on the last page is a graph that I threw up in my report. Just wanted to kind of go through this, and this has been something that our department, the rec department's been talking about internally. And I've also been working with Philip a lot on this over the last 6 months, and then got HR involved and been talking to other staff members. So what it comes down to is a minor restructuring of our department. So bear with me and try to follow this. I was hoping to do this in person, but here we are with technology coming from across the town. But in our structure here, so where we see a recreation supervisor, that has typically been a recreation director. So the concept here is for us to take a chunk off of the rec director's plate, primarily capital improvement project management, short and long-term facility development, and parks and amenities planning. Taking that off of the rec director's plate and then creating 2 new positions. We carve off a chunk of that and then bring back our recreation supervisor role, which allows someone to focus on management of the program, hiring staff, managing budgets, hiring and training staff, promoting the programs, everything under the sun. As I was going through our job description, there's about 17 primary roles that this rec supervisor can do. But then there's like another 10 roles that kind of puts that job over the top in terms of sustainability. So we would move in a new position, which we would call a recreation special projects manager. So similar to what Joel Benson has done for our administrative team, is this person would, again, focus on everything outside of daily operations and management, but all the big long-term planning projects, short-term planning projects, working on our CIPs, making sure that we're raising funds and awareness for the projects we want to accomplish. The list goes on and on. But so that position would be part-time at about 20 hours a week. Then looking to the left side, we have program coordinator ×2. So right now we have a program coordinator and then an assistant program coordinator, but our programs are getting busy enough and enrolled with such high numbers now that having 2 program coordinators, one that would focus on youth opportunities and another that would focus on adult opportunities to take care of that heavy workload related around all things that it takes to design and implement healthy and safe programs for our community. And then on the right side is our existing position, which is facility and special event permitting and specialist. That's Ben's role right now, and he does an amazing job at keeping on top of all things special events to make sure they're planned well and safe for our public to interact with our special event providers. Then below in the middle, we have our administrative assistant, which we just hired, which is going to be part-time, 15 to 20 hours a week year round. And then bottom left are our part-time contracted instructors. Those are the folks that teach certain sectors of our programming. And then our seasonal staff are folks that help with like umpiring and reffing, line judging, etc. So I'm keeping these positions nameless, kind of for a reason. One is, this is a proposed concept. And again, our team is really excited about it. It brings more people power to our department, but doesn't rise the cost of operations by much at all. It creates a few more sustainable roles, because as we're seeing, to stay on top of everything that needs to get done on a daily basis and focus on planning future opportunities and future planning that we need to grow into what the town will see happen over the next 5 to 10 years. We feel like this is a good approach. So in full transparency, now that you kind of know a little bit about the roles, is I'm looking at moving into our special projects management role, which would be going to 20 hours a week, and then opening up the recreation supervisory role internally to our staff in and around the town. So to our 40 staff members that we have now. Why am I doing this? Well, there's a couple reasons. I want to start off by saying this has been by far, being the rec director, the most rewarding and fun job I've done, supported by amazing staff members and management. And Philip is the best boss I've ever worked for. And I just love every day being at town. But for me personally, the 20-hour-a-week option to focus on a couple of things that I feel really comfortable with, and I really want to help shape the future of the town so we can be as successful as possible. My abilities really kind of float towards this recreational specialist role for project management. So I wrote up 3 more pages of notes, but since we're not in person sitting at the table where I can show it to you, I'll hold off on that and then open up questions, because I'm sure there might be some questions from the board and or other staff members as it relates to either my report or the potential restructuring of our rec department. The great news is we're staying together as a team. It's just different roles. So I shift from like a quarterback to a wide receiver, where I get to still be in every play, but not the person touching the ball every moment of the day. So hopefully that's a good analogy for some of you. Maybe it was terrible, I don't know. So I'm gonna stop talking because I always talk too much, and answer any questions that trustees have.
Trustees? I think absorbing right now and thinking about it, Earl, is going to be key right now, just to see, obviously, you and Philip know the role far better than any of us sitting here at this table. And so your recommendation and your guidance is what the board is going to be looking at. You take us that direction. So we look forward to hearing more, I guess, best way to put it.
Yeah, so as always, I try to be super clear about this. My door is always open, so my phone is always on, unless I'm sleeping, not during the day, but in the evenings. I'll gladly go into it in more detail, but we really feel this would be a very sustainable approach. And, the workload is really awesome because there's so much to accomplish in our town. And a lot of people come to us for help and assistance. And we've taken on little projects here and there and have taken on some responsibilities for the town, which is great. But there's just, a lot of neat opportunities in the future. And we feel like separating the special projects manager from the director's role is a good thing to try, just to help guide us the best way into the future.
Did you have a question, Libby?
Yeah, I just think Earl has done an excellent job as the recreation director. And I think you've really transformed the department years that I've watched. So anyway, I think you're doing great. And that lends credence to your suggestion of changing this around. So I think it should be considered.
Thank you.
More to come, I'm sure. Any other questions, comments for Earl? Thank you, Earl.
Thank
Next,
you.
we have our chief's report, our fire department.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and trustees. It's been a little while since I've been able to be in front of you guys. We had some meeting conflicts and had to take some time off with family to do some vacationing. It's hard to believe it's been 5 months, most of the day that we've signed this IGA, and I believe we've come a long ways. Previous report I submitted, we did talk about medical incident response, which is one of the things. I'm very happy at the progress that we've been making as far as adding new staff with the paramedic. The level of service we've been able to increase with the ability to do IVs, advanced airways, and actually carry medications for pain treatment and so forth, which is a big step. We've implemented regular trainings with Chaffey County EMS, which is a huge step, just making sure we can provide the best service to the whole community. Many of you guys are probably aware of fire restrictions. We had our first time we've imposed them this year. They've since been lifted, but the whole goal with fire restrictions is trying to coordinate with Forest Service, BLM, town, county, and everybody to go in these restrictions together so we have a consistent message to the community as well as our visitors coming into here. The fire prevention in schools. Our newest fire inspector, Michelle Flores, has been assigned to work with the school resource officer closely on the fire drills and school events. Our big goal this year is really trying to be a lot more involved with the schools, even outside of the standard fire prevention week, becoming more active in the schools. And as far as prevention as well, as we're looking for some outreach. Sorry. We did have a child fatality review that we did and try to figure out how we can prevent future child fatalities in the community. One of the things we're going to be working with the DHS, Department of Human Services, developing a program to ensure smoke detectors are in all these houses. So the more people we can get that are in houses in our community to be able to look for smoke detectors, and if there's the absence of them, the fire department will come and install them to be able to get them out there, which would be a huge step of getting more eyes out there for us. Fire hydrants, one of the things that's important for us on pre-planning, all of our firefighters have an app that we pull up when we get an incident. It shows all the fire hydrants. We're working towards making sure all the fire hydrants are logged appropriately. So Michelle is working on that with one of our resident firefighters, but also we're working with the town because that's also one of the things we want to make sure everybody has the same information. We know where our hydrants are in the future. Moving on, last report I can mention, Candidate Academy. Candidate Academy is where our new volunteers go through. It's a little over 40 hours of training, which is the initial training to be assigned to a fire station. We currently have 4 candidates going through the academy. They'll be graduating on October 30th, which is exciting. We have one person for each of our 4 stations. 2 of our stations in town, as well as our Nathrop station, will have new volunteer firefighters. But along with that, we've brought on a new resident firefighter based out of our Nathrop station. And he'll be finishing up his training. Currently, he is running shifts with us, which is great. And then we are actively recruiting new resident firefighters with our Poncha Springs station. We'll have the ability that we're going to add 5 new resident firefighters, and we're hoping to bring them on board in February. One thing I didn't mention on here with medical response, since Chief Morgan is on here, I do want to give a shout out to the BV Police Department on their assistance on a couple of our calls. One was a medical cardiac arrest call. We did have 2 officers respond. took immediate action to start CPR. They did give that patient the best chance that they could survival, and it was great to see them working together, stayed out, helped us throughout that incident. Another one, we did have a call on 4 Mile last week, where we did have BVPD respond along with Chaffey County Sheriff's Department and police dog Thor, who helped with an interesting incident we had where actually responders were threatened. So definitely appreciate the response they had with that. So we talked about fire restrictions already, our construction Punch and Springs, and we are excited about moving on with that. Our Chaffey Chips program, and this kind of addresses a question we had earlier with the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, what we're doing in that red area towards the game trail. Chaffey Chips this year, well, Chaffey Chips every year we choose 4 communities that we're going to do slash haulaway for. This year we did part of game trail. We hauled over 200 piles of slash out of the community, which was done by, it was, I believe, over 1,900. Well, so far this year for Chaffey Chips, 1,900 hours were committed to reducing the fire danger up there. So game trail was a large majority of that, over 200 piles we hauled away. We are going to be doing another section of game trail at a later date. We do have some restrictions on when we cut what type of vegetation. Unfortunately, the junipers, when we did the event, were not a time to cut them. So we're going to help do some more slash haulaway events up there. That whole area, we are working with the Community Game Trail, 3 Elk, 4 Elk. They are all submitting different grant applications to try to do mitigation work, which all goes towards that highlighted red area everybody's concerned about. Also with the Chaffey Chips program we do have that funded. Through Common Ground has committed 3 years of funding for the program. Through State Forest, we have 5 years committed towards that program. Our goal is to keep this program continuing, identifying 4 communities every year, as well as one-day events to be able to do that. We were able to allocate some grant funds to purchase a mini excavator. This is used for loading the trailers and hauling slash. It also has the ability to be able to put a mastication head on it in the future to do mitigation work. So this is used for future programs throughout the county, as well as in town if we have those needs. So we're excited with where we're going with the mitigation work. Everything going on the fire department, and I'll see you in my report. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chief. Does anybody have any questions for Chief Bertram? You know, I like the fact, I guess I'll point out, right there is his email. If you have any questions or comments, he's welcoming that input. We appreciate it, Chief.
Thank you.
It's really great to hear the reports and how smooth everything is going, because it was a big undertaking that we took as a town. So
very good.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you and have a good night.
You too.
Item 10, really? Item 10, and we're just now business. Okay, never mind. Business items. Item 10, C. Update policy on the Independence Day special events. Board will consider approving and updating policy limiting extra special events during Independence Day. I believe, excuse me, is Ben's bringing this forward?
Yes, he is.
Hey, Ben.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me. As the mayor said, I'm on page 57, business item C. It's an update to our policy that was brought to the board after conferring with our department directors and our Recreation Advisory Board. This policy was originally brought in November of 2020. It passed unanimously. Basically, there's some minor changes, some grammatical changes, as well as an addition of a graphic to help explain what days were restricted. It's the 4th of July, 2 days prior and 2 days after. Also, we're requesting that we add the Food Shed Alliance's Sundays Farmers Market. That event has been occurring in town since 2010. It's been held at various locations. It's a small event with local vendors. It's very community focused, and it only has between 50 and 150 attendees each week. And it's seen as a low impact to town staff due to the lack of incidents from this event. And it's just overall a great community event. So subject to your questions or comments, we're requesting approval with amendments or denial of this updated policy.
Comments? Go ahead.
Sure. All right. So I guess to start, and I know we were all sent that letter, so kind of to address that, I mean, there were 27 businesses that did sign that letter. So I think it obviously warrants some time to chat a little bit here. So I really have two things, right? So reading this, I see, I think, and I could be wrong, but I take away the most important part of this is obviously public safety and making sure that people are having a good time and we're doing everything best we can to make sure it's safe. That we have enough first responders, supporting staff. So I guess my first question is, if a private business wants to, or a business wants to have something held on their private property, is there a possibility of them hiring security or bringing in the proper EMT? Like, is that something that could potentially be considered so that maybe they can hold the event? We're not stressing staff or town, town officials or first responders, the police, that if they were to cover that, is that something maybe we could consider? I don't know if I should ask my second question yet.
Well, do you want us to dive into that?
Yeah, sure. If you
Okay.
could. Just a thought.
Good question, because we have encountered private security at some of our events that are getting large enough to justify that. Ben, I think between you and Dean, I'd recommend a response from you guys on that.
Absolutely. So staff did not receive that letter. It did trickle down to us eventually late this afternoon, so we really haven't had a chance to digest it. However, one of the events that was mentioned in the letter was the Red, White, and Blue Suede Shoes event. And they did have a private security team that was part of the conditions of the permit. And that was seen as a mitigating factor to help alleviate some of the strain. However, and I'll let Chief speak to this, a private security, they can handle events inside the venue and on private property. But if there's a criminal issue, my understanding is they can't resolve that. Also, even though there was private security, there were some significant incidents that did arise out of that specific concert. So just having a few individuals contracted as security doesn't completely negate all risk.
Yeah, I can speak to that just real briefly. Private security, kind of think of it like a bouncer at a bar. They can mitigate problems inside, but if there's an intoxicated person that's being combative or has broken the law, obviously the bar is not going to put that person in a holding cell or take them to jail. Usually they just put them out on the street. So private security is definitely helpful, and it definitely helps keep an event where there's a lot of alcohol. It can help maintain the calm, but if a person gets out of hand, which has happened sometimes in the past, often they'll just kick them out, and then they're on the streets of Buena Vista, and then they become our problem. And one of the concerns about that is I know there was some talk about the term infrastructure. And part of infrastructure is that it can support sustainable functionality. So for the police, one of the event organizers that I spoke with in the past referenced Aspen Police and how they do things. It's really important to understand Aspen Police. I just looked at their website, has 26 officers, 6 code enforcement, 3 detectives. Over most of the summer, we had 8, including myself, including our detective. So when you have an event that is a good event, it's a safe event, it was a fun event, we certainly support that. But when there's alcohol and things like that, often there are peripheral things that surround that event. And for example, the Red, White, and Blue, we had 2 sex assaults come out of that event. We had DUI So things like that, and that's a big task on, I would say, the infrastructure, and it take officers from other things. And we always have to consider for public safety those variables, that you could have a weekend where nothing happens and everything goes off without a hitch. But there's always those variables that we have to account for of, do we get a bad domestic violence somewhere else in town? And that takes our resources. Just a DUI by itself takes an officer off the street probably close to 5 hours or more. And when we only have just a handful of officers, that's a big ask.
Thank you for that. And the second question I kind of have just like kind of deals with the end of the policy, and I guess this was done in November 2020, so obviously I wasn't here for that, but I'll bring this up anyway. I think the end here, it asks that we only limit to traditional and historic events for this holiday time period. And I kind of want to question why just traditional and historical events. I mean, we have 6 events, and with safety and infrastructure, I can see like, hey, we can only tackle so much. I can appreciate that. But why just traditional and historical? Like, in my opinion, it's good to have opportunities for all, right? It seems to be the same people get to do the same thing year after year, and I can understand where there's merit in that, and that has some value, but I also think things change, and maybe there's other things that might be of value that could be brought to the town or from different businesses in town, and giving them an opportunity to have an event. I think that should, be considered, that so it's not just, monopolized,
That word.
Yeah, that word that I can't spit out by essentially one organization or two. I think maybe that should be, I know that puts more work on staff to look through additional permits and applications and such, but I do think opportunity would be more of a fair situation if we can only have essentially room for potentially 6 events over 4th of July, which is a huge weekend for many people for different reasons. So just something to consider. And I guess I did have a question in there saying why just traditional and historical? Sorry, I kind of
No, that's
went
fine.
around and
I can speak to that. It's a great question, and I'm glad you bring it up. It helps bring some context of where this originated from. I'll just share that coming out of 2019, planning for 2020, before we knew COVID was coming, staff was looking at applications for the 4th of July weekend, that time period that you see there. With so many events that it was overwhelming how we were going to try to cover all of that and how we were going to route traffic through the downtown area, because there was a pretty sizable event being proposed down in the South Main area. At the same time, Cedar and Main Street with some of these traditional ones were being blocked. And so the traffic routing and everything was crazy. It was to the point where as a staff, we were like, this is not safe. This is of concern. So it really originated there from that realization, planning for 2020, which obviously didn't happen because of COVID.
Right.
It gave us time to work on a policy that the board did adopt later in the year. But a lot of discussion went into, are we creating sort of a monopoly? But by restricting, does that feel right? Is that, how do we adapt over time if, say, some of these things do fall off? Well, which is why this policy has been back to the board probably this is the 3rd time I would like to say. So it is something that should be looked at, reviewed, and changed over time if the board would like to do that, especially if some of these traditional ones fall off. But really it originated from, this is what works for our infrastructure, which, as Dean put really well, is our roads, safe travel, but also our people resources as well. that was the origin of this.
And I'll reiterate too, and that's where staff had brought that forward. They were overwhelmed. Could not physically handle more events, moving barricades from one location to another, staffing, just the police department, let's say, you have people that are on overtime for how many days? Because we only have so many. The same with our rec staff. Again, I don't know how many hours, I don't even want to know how many hours these guys put in after the fact that we don't even see by doing the barricades and lining and organizing and getting things going. And that's where that came from 2019, 2020. They were just overwhelmed. And so we had to look at protecting, and you can call infrastructure what you want, whether it be this table or staff protecting our infrastructure. And that's where that all evolved from, definitely. It was a stress on staff, big stress. Yeah. That's where it originated from.
Yeah, sorry, just one more. And also trying to balance, not everybody's excited about the increased activity all packed into that time period. And so we're not just dealing with people that are excited to propose new events. We're also dealing with people that are trying to help address concerns from people that are living here and are reaching out more and more with concerns about the amount of events, especially packed into a time period. So the thought is trying to create a certain amount of activity that aligns with capacity, and then promoting events any other number of weekends during the year like we're seeing. So that's the basis here.
Thing it is, there's going to be a large number of people in town anyway, and these businesses are still going to have business on their way because there's going to be people in town. So I don't think this hurts anything.
Other comments? Questions?
It seems like a big block of time to not allow any events. The second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. The fourth itself has, the parade should be a big deal. It hasn't been able to be that in the last couple of years, but hopefully it'll get back to that. Art in the Park seems to be struggling. On the soccer field, I don't know if it's going to move back down to McPhillamy Park or.
Oh, are you speaking about?
Is that not it? Oh, is it Gold Rush?
Gold Rush.
Different.
Art in the Park is in McPhillamy. Okay, yeah, so that I think works well, and that's more than a one-day event. I think.
Just one day.
Just one day.
Just one day?
After that, right?
And the fireworks is, rodeo grounds type area, farmer's market, not a big deal. The firecracker 5K, I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's a big deal or not.
It's personnel.
I definitely appreciate what you're saying about,
Yeah.
the personnel of setting it up and the security and safety issues. I don't want to just be not paying attention to what our businesses are concerned about, and they're following the right process, I think, to come and speak to us and, organize on their own and speak to us. So, I'm not sure which way to go. I mean, I do respect what the staff has put forth.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'm the liaison to the rec board. So I've sat in on all the rec board meetings in the last year, and I've definitely heard from the rec staff and Ben specifically the long hours that they have put into some of these events. That it is a lot of hours and it's a lot of manpower. And, I don't see this as a thing of, town staff just coming up with a restriction because they want to kill fun or get rid of business. That it's coming up with this small restriction to really show that they're strapped right now, for these specific times. And town is strapped then. You can tell it's super busy regardless of events. As we saw last year during when there was 0 events, we were insanely busy with 0 events. So I feel like this is a small ask to the business community and to that it's 5 days out of 365 days that staff is asking for a little bit of leniency. Staff and the police and fire and everyone else. And, I feel like that is a reasonable request. If there was a request from the business community to help work with this, then that could be one thing, but I don't really feel like that's what's being asked. It's not, hey, let's work together to try to figure this out. It's more of us against them. And I don't like that either. It's not us against them, it's us trying to create a safe environment for our community and everyone who comes here. So I see it as okay. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe we're gonna see on the road that we don't like it and we can change it. So, just like everything else, nothing is completely set in stone. We can future board and future meetings can always figure it out. So those are my thoughts on it.
That's one more question.
Go ahead.
Sorry. And sorry, I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud with this and asking questions, but I'm learning as I go too. And I think it's valid to, well, I'm here to use my voice, so that's what I'm doing, I guess. But so I'm not questioning or asking for more time from staff and putting more work on, the police force and things like that. So I guess what I'm getting at is if we're okay with doing 6 events in that time frame, if we've been like, hey, we can allot that, we can utilize our resources for 6 events. Why? I guess I'm still kind of a little, well, or maybe I just don't agree, but why can't that be opportunity for any 6 events? So it's not asking for more time, but just opening the door for other people to have an event versus the same 6. So I'm not trying to take more from staff. I understand and respect that they are overworked as it is, but is there opportunity to switch that out? I guess that's where I'm asking if anybody be open to maybe that thought within this policy. If not, so be it. But I kind of feel like that might be meeting in the middle and trying to work a little bit with the businesses so they feel that there is a shot or an opportunity to, be able to enjoy 4th with their business in the game as a prime spotlight as well. And I agree with Norm. Obviously everybody will get business because it is busy, but again, I'm big on opportunity for all if there's that chance. So but I'll shut up now. So thank you for listening to my thoughts.
Never be afraid to make comments. Never be afraid to. I know where that stemmed from, and it was a basis of starting somewhere. And so it was taking that base group of events and saying, okay, these are the first ones we're going to go with. Obviously, and I think Philip mentioned it too, who's going to drop out or maybe not, that kind of thing.
Right.
I don't think, and I'll go with what Devin said, it can always be flexed or adjusted. So I don't think in that respect that it's etched in stone. That was a starting point. And I think that's the reason it came out the way that it did, saying that, all right, these are the ones that have been coming here for the past however many years.
Sure.
These are the ones that get first shot. And that's where that derived from.
Gotcha.
That's where that derived from.
I can,
Like I say, not saying it's etched in stone. Board can always make adjustments anywhere along the line. And who knows? I mean, the Alliance may drop out, Art in the Park may drop out. I don't know. You never know who's going to go. Dave, do you have any comments?
Nothing other than to say, I don't think we're anti-music or anti-business or anti-anything. It's protection of our infrastructure, protection of our citizens, safety for everybody involved. I understand where the businesses are coming from, but there's just not capacity to allow unlimited events and to the why these 6, I'm not even sure that really factors into how much volume we're dealing with on that time frame anyway. So it's I don't know that if one dropped out, whether we would add another one. I guess that would be a consideration for another time. To me, it's just simply capacity. We have 8 police officers. We can't expand or ask more of staff than they're already contributing. So it makes sense to me.
Any other input?
Some of these events are definitely for the 4th of July. They wouldn't work any other time. They kind of draw a certain crowd dropping one event and doing else that brought in a whole different crowd could conceivably bring 5,000 people to town that wouldn't have come for these events. So you have these events and these events, depending on what you kind of put together is the varied crowd. A lot of the people over the years expect to come to Buena Vista and have small town 4th of July. Not saying that I love music. I do love music. I am not against the music, but they're doing it for just this short period of time for the sake of our staff. I would hate to lose police officers because they never had time to enjoy something with their family because they're always working extra hours. Our staff have families too, and they have a right to enjoy life. Does that make sense?
And you did point out, now I see Dean's up there. Is it still Dean's hand or?
Dean and Earl both have their hand.
Both of them. Whomever's first, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, thank you. These are really good questions, and I really appreciate the public forum. On the police side, I would also second that we don't have anything against entertainment. I also love music. I go to a lot of concerts, different type of concerts, but I know that it's a good release and it's a good thing for community. Just as a quick comment, and it piggybacks off of what Trustee Swisher just said, is the 4th of July is a special beast. It's consistently been our busiest day of the year, and some of those events are specific to the 4th. So the police are really only involved heavily in the town parade and the fireworks display. To my knowledge, other than a couple, walkthroughs or something, we've never had any involvement in farmers market or art in the park. So part of the question is the type of event that's coming in. If you bring in a concert venue with music and a lot of alcohol, we have had, fights break out, disorderly, intoxicated people, bar fights and things like that, where there's a band. We've never had that at the farmers market. So that's one of the considerations. And if you just look at our traffic plan, for example, for the fireworks display, there's numerous roads that we have to block. There's numerous traffic we have to reroute. It's at nighttime. We have to have our officers highly visible. Chaffee County Fire was a big help with that, but that's a huge ask. And last year, you can see us doing traffic stops on some of our body cameras. There's fireworks, big ones, going off all over town. And we're getting calls left and right, people complaining about it. And we had to ignore those. We just didn't have the manpower to go chase all of that down on top of everything else. So I think that's part of the catalyst. The final thing I'd like to say is I think it might be worth differentiating between when we're talking about businesses and the money that goes to them from these events. I think it's worth differentiating when we're talking about an event at the Meadows and this 4th of July event that was a band, because I would it would stand to reason in my mind that having a 4th of July parade on Main Street is going to bring a lot of visibility to those businesses. So just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Earl?
Well, I took my hand down because most of my comments have been addressed by other trustees, but I think Cindy hit the nail on the head. The issue with the 4th of July is there's certain events that cannot reschedule. So that's the 4th of July parade, which is on the 4th, and the 4th of July fireworks. So they're, glued to those days, and they're two big events. I just wanted to reiterate what's already been spoken. That's it.
Thank you, Earl. No other questions, comments, board? Everybody's had good input. I really appreciate it. So what we're looking for here is a motion to request to approve with amendments, or deny.
I'll make the motion, we approve this update.
Thank you, Norm.
Second.
Second, Swisher. Further discussion.
Something I wanted to say, but I forget what it was now.
I'll say something, I'd love to be on board with everybody on this, but I don't think I can because at the end of the day, there are some events on here I don't think would have to be happening over those 5 days, that there could be an opportunity for other events from businesses to be included. I understand, I'm not saying more than what is allotted here with 6. Again, it's not about putting more into the craziness of the weekend. I understand there's only so many. I'm just talking about potentially allowing others to flip-flop or be included in others, maybe not be included. I won't name them because I don't think that's appropriate, but there are some things in there I think could stand an opportunity for variance. But I just want to say that before the vote.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, and I really support the music that is being brought to this community. It's one of the reasons I live here is the music that's been happening here. But I really, that's why I volunteered to be the liaison to the Meadows and music here in town. But I also see the stress and the challenges that staff have. So I think that's a really important thing to keep our awesome staff here and working for us, and to work with businesses in the future to bring really awesome special events, not necessarily on these exact days, but bring events and people to this town to spend money and support our businesses, times when we need people, when we need money. Workers here need work. So something to think about and to really work towards working together and not against each other. So I don't know.
Thank you, Devin. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Fay,
Yes.
trustee Lucrezi,
No.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Bolt.
Yes.
Thank you all very much, and let the record show 5-1. And thank you, Gina. Next on the agenda is the public input campaign, town-owned land focused on Carbonate Street lots. Joseph.
Good evening. Thank you all very much for your time and attention through all of these really important topics. I won't take much of your time. More than anything, what I wanted to do is provide a little bit of a reminder on the journey around these two parcels thus far, and give a little bit of a preview to come for next meeting on the 26th. And hopefully set this up in a fashion that would lead towards forward momentum from the 26th. So that's the intention for this few moments right here. I want to start with just a bit of a reminder that before my time with town, you all worked with staff and with Becky Gray at the Office of Housing to take a survey of some town-owned parcels specifically asking questions around how could these parcels be utilized or be appropriate for development with housing. And in that exploration in late 2019, you all identified the Carbonate Street lots, as we've started to call them, or right field for those that remember the ball fields, as very appropriate for exploration for housing. They're close to infrastructure, they're owned by town, and they're already next to collegiate commons, the affordable housing apartments, as well as zoned appropriately for relatively dense development. Obviously, with the onset of the pandemic, focus on those parcels and the idea of town working on affordable housing got set aside for other priorities. And yet the board picked it back up in May of this year by engaging with the Chaffee County Community Foundation to conduct community engagement and site study work on those two parcels to really ask questions. How can we better understand the local need for affordable housing, and then really start to look at what do those parcels, what could they support from a number of units standpoint? How could childcare start to be raised as a topic that could be addressed in those parcels? And then also, most recently through the public input campaign that we put together, asking the question to citizens, is this an appropriate role for your town government to take? Is contributing land for the purposes of housing and childcare? So all of those pieces have come together over the past few months. And next board meeting on the 26th, in your packets, you will see the sort of final report from the Community Foundation on the results of all their community engagement work and the data they've gathered, the results of the site study, which demonstrates one way in which those sites could be built out and helps frame the context for how many units might be thought about. And really paired with that will be recommendations for you all to consider and wrestle with around how to move forward. Is this still an appropriate expression of your priorities as a board? And if so, how can we move forward with a sense of urgency, recognizing the urgency around housing, childcare, and other opportunities on these parcels? So with that, I wanted to kind of honestly end this business item. I don't know, Philip, if you want to add anything, and or if there's specific questions or thoughts you all want to offer that might have been spurred by the public input campaign or anything else.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just a heads up. It's coming next meeting. So we will be looking for direction if the board's ready at that point. So dig into that item perhaps. That's the heads up and kind of call to action request for the board. We'd love to move forward, but not only if the board is obviously ready to give that direction. So
is the public input campaign, I mean, is that over now or is it still ongoing at this point? But
so there were two primary elements of that. The first was an 8-minute YouTube video that I put together. That is still on YouTube and very much available for folks to watch. The end of that ends with 4 questions that folks can email me responses. So I've gotten a variety of responses from that. We had a public meeting to sort of cap that campaign's active phase, I guess you would say, last night here. So folks have had a decent opportunity to participate so far. I wouldn't say that we're closing the campaign by any means. It will remain open, but we will only see probably through this week for your packet.
And I guess the best way I'll put that is a campaign ever over? You know, the way I see it as a board, we're always open for suggestions, comments from the public. And when it comes to something like this, I don't think you'll never shut that door. In my opinion, that's just the way I feel about it. So appreciate it. We look forward to next meeting. I think it'll be great. Is that it?
Yeah.
Gosh, you killed me 5 minutes, man. Next item. The amendment to the 2021 fee schedule on the short-term rental fee, a resolution amending the 2021 Town of Buena Vista fee schedule to adjust fees for the short-term rental licenses. Philip, are you starting on that or running with it?
I'm gonna turn it over to Paula and Lillian if
All right.
you all are okay with that.
Uh-oh. On the.
Oh, wait, this is the moratorium? No, fee schedule.
Fee schedule. Fee schedule. Fee schedule. I can do it if you guys want to.
I can do it. Heck, I don't care. I don't know what it is, but I'll do it.
There's just with the updated code, there's a little more time that is required from staff to process both renewals and new licenses. And so, as you guys know, that a fee has to be representative of the time that it takes, the direct costs in order to process that fee or application, I guess. And so the fee has gone through some mathematics and has come out at $250 for initial application or first year license fee. That's just in time, staff time, grant, Lillian, Paula, et cetera. And an annual renewal fee of $150. So they've increased a little bit. And so that is, we'd like that change.
But no business license.
So the business license, the code, we had thought it was going to be wrapped up in one form. So the business license and the short-term rental license, but it was the way it was actually worded. The short-term rental does not require the business license. It is wrapped up into the short-term rental license. So it's not a separate thing.
So that's included in that fee.
Well, it's that is the only thing that a short-term rental will need to do is the short-term rental license, which de facto is the business license.
It's a business license. Okay.
So it's not two separate fees rolled into one. There's only one fee for the short-term rental license, correct?
And that encompasses the whole thing. Okay. Cool. It appears to me it's like almost $100 on the initial. Wasn't it about, isn't it, Paula? Wasn't it?
$100 increase on the initial.
Yep, and the other one was like 50 or something like that. Yep.
And there is, the trustees always visit the fee schedule, usually about December to match the current budget, but because this is going along with the ordinance, we brought it forward now ahead of time so that it can be captured once the licenses or the applications are submitted.
And not that I question anything you said about the legalities of it, but Jeff is right there. And I know he'll explain to us why we can't charge $1,000 for that fee.
Yeah, and I think actually Joel did mention that there's basically some law about how you can charge a fee and what can be included in a fee. And generally it has to be generally related to the costs the city incurs in administering the license. So you just can't pick anything you want. So that's why Joel did the little analysis on the 250 and 150, because that kind of relates to what the costs the town will be incurring in administering these short-term licenses.
And thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Joel, because I know it's been mentioned before. Why don't we charge $500 for a license just because we can?
I like that.
And it's, it's based. So it's all cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I would entertain a motion.
To approve resolution number 41, series 2021.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, Fay, further discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee?
Yes.
Trustee Rowe?
Yes.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Swisher?
Yes.
Trustee Boyd?
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing of the 2021 budget presentation. I open the public hearing. We will hear from, excuse me?
Item
F.
Huh?
Item F.
Short-term rental.
Oh, wow, they were both the same. I'm sorry. I was going to jump right. Well, it's only 5 minutes. We want to extend the short-term, okay, I close this public hearing. We want to extend the short-term rental moratorium and emergency ordinance extending a temporary moratorium on the acceptance, processing and approval of any application for short-term rental licenses within town. This is one Philip wanted to run with. Pass the ball.
The 24th of August, we passed this emergency moratorium, temporary moratorium for accepting, processing, and approving any applications for short-term rental licenses. This was to buy some time so we could get the short-term rental ordinance completed, which we've done and the board approved it. The way the statute works is once you approve an ordinance, you publish that ordinance, 30 days later, it goes into effect. So the moratorium was 2 months and it was set to expire naturally on October the 27th because of the 30-day notification or because of the publishing and the 30-day to go into effect. That takes us past October 27th. So we're asking for an extension and through November 7th of this moratorium so that applications don't start coming in on October 27th under the old code until November 7th under the new code, because it will create some difficulties to manage and deal with. So that's what this is for, temporary, just a little extension.
Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
And we'll use Earl's analogy of quarterback, wide receiver, or vice versa, throwing the ball back. Okay, so we need a motion.
I'd like to make that motion.
Thank
We
you.
approve ordinance number 16.
Second. Second, Gina. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching me on the public hearing. I will open the public hearing on the 2021 budget presentation. Wow, it says 15 minutes. Did you notice that? I'm sorry, I'm just kidding.
We're ready for that.
No, I'm not. It's 10 till. That's all right. It's all good. I open this public hearing. We will hear from staff first.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. The memo for this presentation is on page 79 of the packet. This is the second presentation that we generally make. And at this point, we present the general fund and the capital improvement fund, since that's where most of the activity goes and the variations of the different projects. We will be, the activity for the budget will again be inside of ClearGov. And earlier today, I sent out invitations for the trustees and the mayor to go into ClearGov to make comments and review. That's the word I was looking for, review the budgets. And then everybody should be able to go in on their password and ID that they set up previously. The only one who's going to need to set up a new password is Gina. And so, but the email and the directions will be pretty clear. So it's no big deal. The OpenGov or the ClearGov programmers are making constant improvements to the website, and so you'll probably see some new things and some more functionality and some easier to use items. So the first thing we need to tackle is setting the public hearing dates for the following regular meetings. Next meeting, October 26th. The 2 in November, the 9th and the 23rd, and the December 14th is where we hope to approve the budget. And so that's the first order of business.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Are there any clarifying questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to open this portion of the public meeting to public comment. Philip, do I see any hands raised?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. I close this portion of public comment. Trustees, any comments between you, amongst you? Okay, first item is in this public hearing would be to set the meeting dates, the regular meeting dates for continuing the public hearing. Yeah, 26th, November 9th, 23rd, and 14th. Could I have a motion?
I would make that motion.
Second.
Second, Swisher. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And Michelle, your second item?
So we have attached a listing of the proposed capital improvement projects for your reference. And that begins on page 80 of the report. The first three funds have not been presented as far as the operating budget goes, simply because we're still nailing down some of the pieces to the water fund project and the airport and the street fund capital projects. We're still kind of tweaking them. Page 81 is the general fund. Now, keep in mind that anything that is a capital project in the general fund shows up in the capital improvement fund. And when the assets are constructed, purchased, or whatever we do, that is when we book the assets, they get booked to the general fund. So, and then there's it's really a complicated presentation, and Philip made this graph and it's perfect. But on the far left is the capital project, and right next to it is the cost. And then the next several columns are where the money's coming from. And so we want to keep it in mind that, say, for instance, the Arizona Street Trail and Bridge is going to cost $853,000, but the money is going to come from the general fund and from fund balance from prior years and from grants, and other projects have grants and from the Conservation Trust Fund, or the police station has from the certificate of participation. So that's the way the grid is set up, and it really is the simplest way to look at it, even though it's kind of crazy looking.
I think it's perfect.
With that, Philip, did you want to say something about the capital improvements?
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. So trustees, I know getting into the budget's kind of hard to pull all the pieces together. So that's why we're kind of breaking it into chunks so that you can see things in different ways. So we called out the capital projects separately in the memo so that you can see what is fitting into the draft budget today, or what's being presented starting today. And again, staff brings you forward a structurally balanced budget, which means our operating revenues cover our operating expenses, in addition to the capital projects that you see listed, broken down by fund here. So a couple of things I just want to highlight, as Michelle explained, the general fund's the easiest one to look at, I think. We do have several carryover projects from year to year, and how that's represented is a chunk of those funds will come from fund balance, because those expenses will not hit the books this year. They will fall to fund balance, and then we will carry those projects forward and spend those monies next year. So when you're going through here and you're seeing, for instance, the community center landscape and irrigation, that was something booked on our budget in 2021. We weren't able to complete it. We're proposing to carry it over. It would pull from fund balance. So that's one thing. The other, the primary one out of the general fund that's not a carryover item that is showing having a chunk coming out of fund balance is the new police station. And you'll see we've got that loaded at 1.5 million. And that makes up a number of items, including what we'll talk about next meeting with the architectural and engineering that we're hoping to get moving on this year. The rest of them do comprise carryover items. So down at the bottom, you'll just see how like general fund is broken out across those. The other thing I want to point out is we've started including the ARP or the ARPA funds, the relief funding. These are really, some of these are placeholders or suggestions until the project is more fully defined. So for instance, the carbonate street housing project, town's looking at giving land, but through that, we also could consider contributing towards other aspects of that project. If we did, we would propose to potentially use some of the ARPA funds. So just there's a couple in there that are like that. The other thing that I wanted to make sure was highlighted out of the water fund is the most important project, which is our gallery and surface plant expansion project. This right now at best is a placeholder. This is what we estimated a couple of years back and broken down by how we would try to make that number work. I will tell you now, it will be larger than that number by a good amount. So instead of just creating yet another number, we have the full engineering report from JVA that we will bring forward and go through some of the cost analysis and options for that project. But that number you see right there is a placeholder basically. So if that number goes higher, we will look for maybe allocating a little bit more of our ARPA funds. The loan amount obviously would increase, and then potentially some more grants, that kind of thing. So very important project. So I wanted to make sure you knew why that was highlighted and said placeholder. That is why. The rest of the projects are pretty well defined, especially a lot of the ones that Rec's been working on with the grants. Those are very specific. Now, another point I want to go ahead and make now, since it's been a topic of conversation a little bit within the community, is okay, what about fund balance? What about things that have been going on this year where sales taxes have been up? Town has held a unrestricted fund balance for a couple of years, and that's been growing. What are we going to do with that? So Michelle put together two fund balance statements, and these are projections for this conversation. So you'll see the first one is a look at what we project the end of 2021 to look like. And with all of our revenues, our budgeted revenues and expenses, plus actual revenues we've seen through July.
Yeah.
What are we looking at for unrestricted fund balance at the end of the year for general fund? And we're looking at $1.442 million. Okay. What this doesn't take into account yet is the carryover items that we've already identified in the budget. Those are still showing in the budgeted expenses. So we are double counting a little bit. So let's move forward into 2022, where we say, based on the capital projects that I listed out before, what we're spending in our budget out of our funds and what we're spending out of fund balance. And you can see that spins our fund balance down to right now what looks like a negative number. Okay. So by doing the police station and all of the other capital budgets listed, we have spent our unrestricted fund balance. Now, again, what I mentioned, we're double counting our carryover projects, which is about 160,000. So this is not a number set in stone by any means. There's a lot of factors here. We know that we're on a trajectory to see excess revenues for the remainder of this year. That's going to change this number We also budget pretty conservatively for revenues. Next year, we're at 3% growth. Next year, likely to see some excess revenues next year, which again will change this projected unrestricted fund balance. But again, the main point being to get a project done like the new police station without having to go to our community for additional taxes or tax increases or any of that. We are utilizing that unrestricted fund balance as much as we can. I wanted to make that clear and let the board ask any questions you may have around that. Not to mention a very long list of other capital projects that have been vetted by staff, advisory boards, and the Board of Trustees in many cases. So thank you for letting me go into a little bit of detail there. Michelle, the only other thing I thought about ClearGov, for anybody that wants a refresher, Michelle's happy to meet with you one-on-one on how to use that tool. It can be a little confusing the first few times you go in there. Once you get in there, it's great. But
and that was a question I was going to raise that question. Do trustees, do you prefer, if you have a question, go to Michelle directly, or would you like to have her give us a brief synopsis next meeting, just kind of like we did the very first time?
I can do both.
I was
I'm
gonna
more
say.
than willing to meet with you one-on-one. And Gina, you may need just a little quick and dirty tutorial together with me, just to figure out where you're moving around. When we get the other funds ready for review, you will also receive invitations to review those. And your passwords are going to all be the same then. And Gina, the one you set up for the one for tonight, the general fund and the capital improvement fund will work once you get into the water fund and the stormwater fund and all of that. So it's a lot more functional, but then just knowing where to click and how to maneuver inside the platform can be overwhelming or whatever. So yeah.
The other thing I want to highlight is Michelle did give you all a printout of where the budget stands right now for the general fund and capital improvement fund on your desk. That'll allow you to start seeing the numbers at the detailed account level now. We will be taking this kind of format and posting it on our website and so that the public can see, because we know the public's not going to be in ClearGov. So we want to make sure that this will be accessible by the public as well. And then if the board would like printouts at any time along the way, we can also accommodate that.
And I've already put the $10,000 for the vision into ClearGov and the spreadsheet in the computer. It's not on the spreadsheet that you have.
And so we'll leave that door open at this point. If anybody would like to have Michelle give a brief at the next meeting, get a hold of Philip so that we can do that. And otherwise set up with Michelle, jump in with her. She can show you how to run through it real quick and click and move around. It's a very easy program once you learn the trick.
Yeah, once you get in there, you'll remember the conversation bubbles icons on the far right of the lines that you have questions about and stuff like that. So
the other thing is, we talk about it a lot. I think it's very important for the public to hear that we take a balanced budget approach. But you'll see on the next to last page, the total general fund balance increase, decrease. So even with all of the projects we have loaded, and we have already preloaded a annual payment amount for the COP for the new police station at $210,000. Those things are loaded in here to know that we can afford it moving forward, because that was one of the discussions that we had when we were talking about the COPs for the police station. You'll see nearly $80,000 of general fund increase. In other words, the board has some flexibility if there's some other projects or other things that come along during the budget process here.
Yeah, and in that ClearGov, you can ask questions. I mean, it's really a slick program. You really enjoy it. Just clarifying, and I want to move forward. This is public hearing. Any clarifying questions on this portion for staff? Okay, I open this portion of the meeting, public comment. If anybody would like to make public comment, Philip, raise your hand. Just checking with you, man. I think we lost everybody at 9:30.
So got some people hanging in there. Yeah, I always pull the short straw and.
No, you're all good.
Don't want to miss.
I don't see anything. Do you, Philip?
No.
So I close this portion of the public hearing for public comment. Any other questions, staff, amongst yourselves? Okay, so we are looking here, remind me, I got to get back to the right spot. I got lost. Here we are. Second motion to, wait, we set the dates.
Yes.
That is it. Is that it?
That's it.
That's it. Okay, cool. Like I say, if you wish to have Michelle get into ClearGov here on the big screen, get a hold of Philip so that we can get that set up. It'll only take a minute. Otherwise, just get in connection with Michelle and jump into it.
I'd like to do that. I think it'd be appropriate in a meeting.
And we could do like pick one light item or something and show how the bubble comments were. I mean, it was really handy the very first time.
Yeah.
It really was. It really was.
I'll do it as part of the.
Let's just do it on the next, let's do it at the next meeting. Yeah, it's really a slick program. It's really great, as a matter of fact. Okay, so that's public hearing. H, opioids, Colorado opioid settlement. There's a really good Goliath. You watch Goliath? Wow, man, that was good about opioids, by the way. So if you get a chance, watch it. It's really good. Anyway, the board will consider approving Colorado opioid settlement memorandum of understanding. This is big. It's really interesting, actually.
A lot of information. Yeah.
Information.
Apologize for all the information, but that's what it is. It's a thing going on across the country and then specific to our state. So Jeff, do you mind giving us like a quick rundown of what's before us?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mind doing that at all. So this is the result of a partial settlement of that nationwide opioid litigation involving local governments suing distributors and manufacturers for damages caused to their community. So the state of Colorado and several entities have been involved in this litigation since the start, and they have a settlement now with a few of the defendants, McKesson, Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen, and Johnson & Johnson. The total amount of money that's going to be available for Colorado is approximately $300 million. And the settlement agreement that was reached by the state on behalf of all Colorado entities, basically, it's complicated, but it basically breaks it out into sort of four main categories of where the money is going to be allocated. The state gets 10% directly. Participating local governments, which will be the town if you sign off on the agreements, is going to be 20%. And then there's regions within the state that are broken out, get 60%. And then there's going to be 10% allocated to like specific projects in dealing with care of the harm caused by opiate abuse and the opioids being sold throughout the state. And so if you sign the agreement and then you basically sign these specific settlement provisions with a couple of the different defendants, you will get a portion of these funds and you'll be eligible for a portion of the funds to be used in the town. Excuse me. And the funds, the agreements have a specific provision that outlines all the purposes that the funds can be used for. And it basically has to be used for purposes that are related to the harm caused by opioids, reducing the harm caused by opioids in the future. So it's a limited use, but it's fairly broad list of what you can use the money for. And so basically, you don't really have a lot of say in the agreement at this point. And if you want to get the funds, you should sign the settlement agreements, and basically all of our clients are pretty much doing the same thing. And I think most local governments are doing the same thing. They're signing off. They'll get some funds. They'll be eligible for use of the funds in their jurisdiction, and hopefully it'll go to help alleviate the harm that's already been caused. So there may be more settlements coming with other defendants, but right now this is the main one that we have with Colorado. I hope that gives a brief summary of where we're at.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Questions?
I have a question.
Gina?
It's actually just a simple question, but I was going through the exhibits because they mention them time and time again throughout, obviously, this huge document. And there's only A and K. And I think B, D, and E are the ones that actually mentioned like what we would actually see, because that's where it's broken down. And I'm curious as to why that was not included, or, I mean, I would like to know that. So.
It would have doubled the size of the packet. So
Oh, okay.
I did strip it out.
Thank you. That's good. Anyhow, that was missing, and
I think based on the calculation I went through, the town was, depending on the total number that was coming to the state, because it references 400 million, it references 300 million. So even at the high level, I don't think they're quite at a total number, but I was looking at anywhere between 70 and 80,000 over this time period. And it's a pretty long time period.
Long time frame.
From what I could tell.
Okay.
So it was a decent amount of money, but spread out over time.
Gotcha. I was just curious because it's like, that's an important part, but I didn't see it anywhere. I was like, I want to know that. Thank you very much.
So do we sign as just our town, or do we also participate in a regional payout?
So you're signing as the town, and then you basically will be able to benefit from the regional payout. And there's various incentives for getting the majority of local governments to sign on. So if all communities join in and sign on, there'll be more money available. So that's why the settlement amount's not completely set right now. But you'll be signing on the town's behalf, but you'll still be able to benefit from the regional amounts of money too.
What happens if some town in our region doesn't sign on?
So they won't get their local government share. And then they'll basically be a negative in the overall number that sign on. It could potentially hurt the overall award that's available.
Is there a reason why anybody wouldn't sign this?
The only reason I would, the first thing, and I think Gina touched on it, was how much are we going to get? Well, if you're going to get $5,000, it's going to be work to try to implement it, to do what they want you to do with it. You know what I'm saying? Gosh, how much staff time does it take to really make sure that we put it in the right place? Well, obviously 70,000 over, let's say 5 years, however long it is. It can be, and I don't know what their particulars are, but it could be education, it could be anything through the schools, police department, something like that. So that would be the only reason I could see somebody saying, nah, I don't want to mess with it.
You can also pool.
More than I'm going to get.
Sorry, you can also pool your money with other entities. And so, it isn't like the town has to run it all itself. So you can use the money with the other qualifying entities, and you can basically allocate that to a purpose. So it wouldn't be like you'd be just stuck having to administer it all yourself too. So
I think that's a key point that the resources can collect. And we don't normally look at or respond to the comments, but it does look like there's some relevant comments being added to the chat. So just to show that on the screen. But yeah, you can see if I haven't verified this number, but you can see, once you start adding it to a region, it starts to add up to a pretty sizable amount.
It's a good thing. It's long overdue, I guess, best way I'll put it. So we need a motion. And I believe it was your signature. Am I correct, Philip? Did I see it was you, or what did I see?
After all of that, all the documentation, I didn't look at the signature page.
Going,
Jeff, do you remember?
Yeah, I believe it, I
Administrator?
believe it is for you, but frankly, I haven't read every one for each one of my clients. It's all the same, so I'm just forgetting what Manatee or what Buena
How
Vista
about
said.
mayor or trust or administrator?
okay, so yeah, let's just, we'd entertain a motion to direct mayor or administrator to sign off on this opioid settlement memorandum of understanding.
And it would also include the subdivision escrow agreement and the settlement participation forms for Jansen and for the distributors. So there's a number of documents you need to approve.
So
do it all in
amend
one
that
motion.
to what Jeff just said.
Yeah, I'll make the motion as amended.
As amended,
I'll second it.
second row, further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. I didn't do
Hopefully
anything.
hopefully it don't cost us more in legal fees than we're gonna get.
No. We
Okay.
we've looked at this for all of our
No,
clients,
no,
and
no.
so it's kind of a no-brainer.
Okay, good deal. I see this letter here, Philip. Letter of support for Chaffey County Habitat for Humanity. I can just basically a letter of support that would be applications for funds under the Chaffey County Marijuana Excise Tax Grant. This would be for Philip to sign off on this support letter. Am I correct?
That's correct. And the town has done this letter in the past, provided this letter in the past towards their grant application.
I would entertain a motion to direct Administrator Puckett to sign this.
I'd like to make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Second Volpe, further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Next item is trustee staff interaction. We'll start off with Joel.
Oh, boy. Nothing in particular, but I would like to just comment. I guess there was that letter that was sent out that had a quote in there about town not supporting, not believing that the economic activity was such from, the different venues and things. That quote has come out. That was a referral response to the Meadows venue request change that happened, last spring? And just a little context about that, that venue request contained a proposal for up to 25,000 person venues. And so it was talking about infrastructure related to those venues in town and the stress there, not the stress of a music event down at River Park. And it also, that bit about the economic data, and you can take any kind of economic data, but there was an informal poll right after the Vertex concert, which was about 15,000 or so. Just businesses over, it was a Labor Day weekend event, and afterward it was an informal poll, about a dozen businesses. Hey, how did it do? And there was no comments of any measurable gain from an event. And just looking at their tax receipts over the weekend. So that's where that came from. Just to give a little context, because that quote gets pulled out in different places and out of context. And it was really out of a referral response specific to adding 25,000 person events here in the summer.
Annually. Yep.
And
for an annual.
Just I want to just give a little context on that. So it's been wielded.
And just to elaborate on that, I can recall a comment. It's probably been 5-6 years ago, where a business on Main Street did not want the 4th of July parade because it impacted their business. And I'm still at a loss on that one. You got how many thousand people as a captive audience, and
They don't go in businesses when they close the street.
I couldn't figure that one out. So there's so much smoke in the air. I don't know how else to put it. So much smoke in the air. Anyway, anything else, Joe?
No, that's it. Thanks for
Thank you.
working on that short-term rental deal. Appreciate it.
Yes, finally. Lillian.
Got nothing.
That's the fail safe. Got nothing. Jeff, would you like to interject anymore?
No, I think I'm okay. Thanks for the offer.
All righty, thank you. Is Dean still with us? Is he
No,
gone?
I sent him out.
Good. Mark left. Ben. Ben's still up there? Yeah, Ben's out there. Still there.
I just wanted to say thank you for all your time, your input and your questions. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Dave, Volpe.
Yeah, I got a couple. First one was spurned by a comment on the radio about the incident that was going on down in Salida with the police department and the school. And one of the results of the incident that they had is a joint session between the Board of Trustees and we're down there to resolve discrepancies and to get on board with, well, to get both boards communicating with one another. Wondering if, number one, if there's value in reaching out to the school board here to have a session to talk about water, land, safety resource officer, that kind of thing. Second part of that is, would our safety resource officer, her part of the function of that position to communicate between police department and school administration to kind of bridge, to communicate between the two organizations? Does that question make any sense?
It does. Thank you for bringing it up. That's a very important aspect to community, as we've seen what's happened down south, and I appreciate you bringing it up. It's a very challenging and ever-changing dynamic, I would say, but having cohesiveness between the police department and the school and staff and administration. And so we meet pretty regularly, including the town administrator, superintendent, and then principals and things like that. I would say that happens at least quarterly, at least for the check-in, but then at the staff level with the SRO, police chief, and the principals, they meet at least on a monthly basis. I think communication is critical. And so I think if the Board of Trustees would like to establish or at least offer a joint session with the school board, I think that's great. I'm pretty comfortable where we're at a staff level, but I think the elected officials need to be talking as well. I don't think there's any harm whatsoever in that. So if the board would like to pursue that, that's great. But yes, the SRO, one of the things Megan has had to learn how to balance is that communication back and forth. And she really does answer to two entities. And that's important for that whole system.
Knowing that, I'm comfortable. I don't know if the board wants to direct otherwise, but I'm comfortable just knowing that communication is actually happening. So, second one is, sorry for opening this rabbit hole again, but I wasn't here in person for the conclusion of the short-term rental policy discussion. I'd like to think about monitoring the policy and how to measure success, failure, or know when to adjust this policy. I know it's brand new, but I think that's an important part of the conversation that I didn't ask for 2 weeks ago. I don't know whether that's something we can briefly touch on tonight, or if it happened and I just didn't see it.
It's a good idea. You could look at it 6 months or.
I don't know what a success would look like, but I have a few ideas what a failure would look like.
We'll have to derive some kind of data that would show positive or negative. Does that make sense? Where would that come from? Would Grant bring that to us? What would we see? I mean, that's what I'm asking. What are you looking for? What are we gonna see?
In my contemplation, I think that the failure would be a negative impact on sales tax dollars. Or I don't know,
I think you're asking for something that's not measurable.
it's possible.
I mean, I don't know how you're gonna measure, how are you going to, let's say, sales tax drop?
Mhm.
How are you gonna point at STRs for being that drop?
It's one of the knobs and the levers that we've got.
See, I don't know how we,
Yeah.
that's no different than it was thrown out there that long-term rentals, what does that affect? And you go, well, we have no way to track those.
Again, sales tax from short-term rentals.
Success or failure of the policy that we adopted 2 weeks ago.
Unfortunately, there's no real way to take it to that granular of a level. Everyone reports on a monthly basis, and then as far as who reports, that's
I'm not sure that that's, and
private.
that's what I'm looking for, honestly. I know that we started with a problem statement. Here's a problem.
right.
How are we gonna solve this problem? How are we gonna know whether we solved the problem? Is my question. I don't know the answer.
But you're looking for two different things from what I'm hearing. You're looking for a sales tax number compared to a housing number, and I'm going, wait a minute, that's,
I don't know that
those two don't fit. Okay, so,
Yeah.
okay. Think about it and maybe brainstorming
Okay.
or something, we can come up with something that makes sense, Philip.
Just a thought. I mean, we will on our ongoing basis be reporting licenses and how that stacks up against our housing inventory. I think the problem statement was pointing back to the community feel and not letting that, those numbers continue to degrade our available housing stock. So failure would be us providing licenses that went beyond the cap limits, right? Or that getting out of whack. I think staff would be happy to share with you some of the feedback we're getting or some of the pain points that we're feeling in the process, or like, hey, this cap's working, but this one's not, those types of things.
Okay,
Staff can-
perfect. Just
And
check
then that
that in
would-
6 months or something. I don't.
And then that would take us into what we've talked about all along, the adjustment of the resolution, the ordinance. Okay, we need to flex this point here and change it to make it work. And I think that's what you're looking for too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Trustee Globe and all the other trustees and mayor, if you'd like to join us November 8th at 8 o'clock at Town Hall, you can probably join the crowd that will be there to submit out of county license, LLC license into P, because we have been inundated with calls as far as when they can submit. So
Should we make that a special meeting?
Bring the popcorn.
Mall or something? Well, actually, do we need to move it here to the community center and have a line and drop numbers and?
Forward all the phone calls.
You can make it a lottery.
Today.
Put it out.
I'm first, sir.
Have anything
No,
else?
that's it.
Being Dave is done, you're on, Paula.
I'm on. Okay, couple things. Lillian is here tonight because I go on vacation as soon as I go back to the office and scan things in. She's doing the minutes. Thank you, Lillian. The other thing, I want to give the Board of Trustees a heads up because I included you on a thank you note that is already on Ark Valley Voice. It went over to the radio station in Chaffey County Times. And what it is the Town of Buena Vista Administration and Board of Trustees would like to thank the staff, individuals, church groups, and organizations that volunteered and donated their time, energy, and resources, cleaning up the grounds and grave sites at the Mount Olivet Cemetery. The cemetery looks excellent. A special thanks to the Knights of Columbus for repairing and painting the chapel. This example of community spirit and cooperation is much appreciated. And signed by Philip, Sean, myself, and Lillian. So.
Very good.
So if you have somebody who says, thank you for the thank you, that's what it is.
That's, I thank you very much.
Yeah, because a lot of it, there was a lot of staff involved. And then as far as the community groups, it was definitely group effort.
Very good. Thank you. Anything else, Paula?
That's it.
Have a very good vacation.
I will.
I know you will. She's not gone yet, but you can see it in her eyes.
She ready.
I'm fun.
Libby,
if you don't know it already, you will soon, that there's an election on November 2nd. And in town, we have school board members there are two races under contention. And then there are 3 issues at the state level that we vote on. So if you want to find out more about these things or watch interviews with the school board candidates, you can go to the League of Women Voters website, which is lwvchaffeecounty.org or League of Women Voters. And there are 2 different Zoom presentations.
And everybody should have a blue book by now too.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Gina?
The only things that, I guess just conversations about how happy people were that we passed the STR policy that we did. And so it was really nice to hear, those comments back that they were proud of us in our push forward to put some caps in place. So that was reaffirming for me as well. So it was great to hear.
Is that it?
Yes.
Thank you. Michelle?
I just want to thank staff and everyone who participated in getting the budget to where it is, and that my trustees are so willing to catch the ball now that we're tossing it over to them. I just really appreciate how everybody works together without the grumbling. Now, there is sarcasm as far as this is your favorite time of year and all that stuff, but I really do appreciate how open you all are to helping with this.
I'm good.
You're good. Devin?
Yeah, I will be traveling for the next month and a half or so. I'm going back to New England to visit family and friends. My mom's having cataract surgery. I'm going to be home for Thanksgiving, but I will be attending all the meetings on Zoom, and I'll be easily accessible unless I'm in the woods completely. So if anyone has any issues with that, let me know. But I'll be here and ready on Zoom, although a few thousand miles away. So I appreciate you guys letting me do that.
Fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Thanks, Devin. Cindy?
Have a good time, Devin.
Yeah.
I don't have any.
Anything? And Joseph, you were first, now you're second to last. What do you got?
I will save everything till next meeting.
You just can't wait. I haven't seen you made any more notes, so I think we're safe. Philip, did you have anything?
I feel like I have to make a statement about how I love music. Anyway, appreciate the discussion on all that tonight and the balance of all the demands that we get to make decisions about. So good stuff there. Norm has a new puppy that's adorable. That yet.
Oh.
And finally, we are very excited about the firm we're going to propose moving forward with on the new police station. And knowing that we have a lot of things on the agenda next week, I just want to kind of get a sense from the board. How much detail would you like from me explaining the RFP process, who applied, and like a lot of that background information? Happy to put that together. But
how many items on the agenda?
A good amount, and I won't.
Okay, then we don't
speak to it all, but I can put it in there.
It's all good. No, we used to get more information on that. And I think maybe a refresher is good. Okay. I think so, because we used to get a lot of information on RFPs and the process. So yeah, I don't think it'd hurt.
Pick on me. Okay, got it.
It'd be all you, man. Okay, so I get to close it out saying, wow, we blew the $600,000 windfall. Hearing nothing else. Oh, wait a minute. Exec session. Okay. Next item on the agenda is executive session to consider the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, and sale of real, personal, or other property pursuant to CRS 24-6-402 paragraph 4, subparagraph A for potential new police station. I would entertain a motion, go into executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, Devin. Second, Gina, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We will reconvene as soon as in the executive session. So I will forward this to Lillian then.
Yep, you can put that to Lily and I'll take some pictures if I need.
No worries, we're all good.
Huh? Oh, I know. Danny was getting tired.
Really?